Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if genius Naruto unlocks a power not seen since ancient times part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. There was a reason why Fuinjutsu was considered the most difficult of the ninja arts, for a single mistake could cost the user dearly. If only Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime, 4th Hokage, had predicted what his mistake would cost him. Together, he along with his pregnant wife Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze had designed a seal as a failsafe, in case something went wrong with her seal that housed the Kyubi no Kitsune, the nine-tailed fox, while she gave birth to her children. The seal was a Bastardi's version of the Shiki Fuin, Death Reaper seal, in that it bound the demon within a mortal body, but would not require the life of the user to power said seal, unlike the original Shiki Fuin that required the life force of the caster to become the catalyst and fuel the seal. It truly was a work of art and an amazing breakthrough in the field of Fuinjutsu. But the side effects weren't known to either Minato or his wife Kushina. They'd find out later and strengthen it if necessary. What could possibly go wrong? Tsunade Senju, the slug Sannin, frowned as she looked over the readings for her surrogate daughter Kushina. She was heavily pregnant, and while her twins were fine, it seemed that the baby girl was stronger than the baby boy in her womb. It wasn't uncommon for one twin to get more nutrients than the other, but according to her findings, the boy was dangerously close to dying before even having a chance at life. Tsunade sighed morosely. How could she break this to Minato and Kushina without destroying their happiness? Her eyes widened as a stray thought crossed her mind. That's it. I'll recommend a chakra and blood infusion for her unborn son before she gives birth that should bring his vitals back up to normal and save his life. It'll be risky, but I'm positive that I can make it work. Armed with her plan, she stormed out of her office located at the hospital and instantly made her way to the guarded room that temporarily housed her surrogate daughter. Sliding open the door, she instantly noticed Minato and Jiraiya, the toad Sannin, there cheerfully talking with Kushina. The mood was warm and happy, and Tsunade swallowed heavily before relaying the results with the Hokage and his wife. What are the risks? Minato asked softly as he listened to his wife sobbing in her bed. To think that this could happen to Kushina, whose entire family is now gone. Theoretically there are no risks, but I would need to find a chakra signature that matches your son's signature for this to work. It would be best if the donor was female, as Kushina is pregnant and it'd assimilate quicker to the child. Tsunade replied instantly, as the seriousness of the situation demanded. Pondering the pros and cons of such a risky endeavor, Minato finally conceded, and after a desperate nod from Kushina, he rose to full height and ordered with power in his voice, "Then get to work, Tsunade. We don't have much time if we want to save our son." Tsunade bowed her head in understanding and spun around before rushing out of the room faster than she'd entered. On the way out, she literally grabbed her apprentice and niece Shizen Kato for assistance, and together they focused on analyzing the many chakra signatures from the Kunoichi of Konoha, the Hidden Leaf Village. It was a daunting task, but 9 days later Tsunade and her apprentice had discovered a match. It was purely by sheer luck that the Kunoichi in question was actually there to visit Kushina and to have her check up as well, for the Kunoichi in question was none other than Kushina's best friend and ex-teammate Mikoto Uchiha. Tsunade groaned in frustration. Why did it have to be an Uchiha? Unfortunately, Mikoto's husband Fugaku Uchiha forbade his wife from agreeing to the blood and chakra infusion as the child was weak and unworthy of the Uchiha blood. Mikoto didn't even hesitate when asked, as she instantly agreed. Her husband Fugaku be damned. What do I need to do? Questioned Mikoto, as she turned a serious gaze to Tsunade. Tsunade licked her lips and spoke up. Thankfully your chakra control is almost perfect, so this'll be easier for you. You need to carefully and slowly feed your chakra through a special seal that I am about to have the pervert place on Kushina's stomach. She gestured to the toad Sannin as she spoke, and he grinned cheekily. I'm not a pervert, I'm a super pervert, thank you very much. Tsunade sighed. She'd have already slapped him if she didn't need his expertise. Just do it, Jiraiya. We don't have time for this. Every second we procrastinate is causing complications. Jiraiya instantly sobered up and nodded seriously. Very well, let's do this properly then. Performing a series of hand seals, he sealed the room and walked over to the unconscious form of Kushina. He carefully inked the seal on her lower stomach, being cautious to not mix or interact directly with Kushina's other seal. He inspected every aspect of the seal, and after what seemed like an eternity, he nodded and backed away. It's done, he spoke tiredly. Be careful though, Tsunadeheim. This new seal is already too close to Kyubi's seal, and one wrong move can trigger it. Understood, Jiraiya, Tsunade replied before turning to Mikoto. It's in your hands, Mikoto-san. Feed your chakra into this seal, but push it past the seal into the womb itself. I've already injected her unborn son with your DNA, so your chakra will be completely drawn to his body. You need to keep feeding him chakra until you feel his body become full. Mikoto sucked in a deep breath and placed her hands on Kushina's stomach before doing as instructed and began feeding her chakra into the seal. She was amazed as she could actually feel her chakra being drawn to and absorbed by the unborn child. After almost an hour of steady work, with sweat marring her forehead, she felt the boy's body finally become full enough for her to pull away. She staggered as she took a step back, and Tsunade instantly steadied her. Thank you, Mikoto, Tsunade breathed. I owe you for this. Jiraiya nodded to the Uchiha woman and repeated the words that his teammate has spoken. Mikoto waved off Jiraiya and simply asked that Tsunade be the one to deliver her child when the time came. Tsunade smiled and agreed to the request. It worked surprisingly quickly. The child grew strong from within Kushina's womb and the readings were off the charts for the boy. His life force was astoundingly strong, and the women just knew that he'd be born equally as strong, if not more so than his twin sister. Several months later found Minato fighting a man in an orange mask that had forced the Kyuubi out of Kushina's seal. The unknown man had used his Sharingan and had manipulated the Kyuubi into attacking Konoha before he was forced to flee after his defeat at Minato's own hands. The devastation was immense, and in the end Minato had only one option: seal the Kyuubi into his children. Kuchios no Jutsu, Yatai Kazushi no Jutsu, Ninja Art Summoning, bring down the house Jutsu, shouted Minato, and despite the seriousness of the situation, laughed as the Kyuubi was crushed under the weight of his personal summon. Standing on the newly summoned Gamabunta, the boss of the Toad clan, they stared down the raging form of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Bunta, I need you to hold the Kyuubi down, Minato ordered with a no-nonsense tone. I'll be right back with a solution to this situation. Gamabunta grunted in effort and managed a nod of acceptance to the order as Minato used one of his signature jutsu, the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique. It was a time/space fusion jutsu that teleported the user to a fixed point, a receiver-type seal usually. The jutsu was instantaneous, and the only visible element left behind was a golden flash of yellow, the very same golden flash that had earned Minato his famous moniker, the Yellow Flash. Flashing to his unconscious wife's side, he picked up his children and frowned. His newborn daughter, whom they named Yumi, was a mini Minato as she possessed blonde hair and his blue eyes. The only thing that she had inherited from her mother was her skin tone and facial structure. His newborn son, whom they named Naruto, had obviously inherited traits caused by the infusion. It was apparently a side effect that Tsunade hadn't predicted, but Naruto's DNA was mutated by the Uchiha blood and chakra. Though he was assured that the chances of Naruto unlocking the Sharingan was low, Naruto now possessed the Uchiha raven black hair, though a single streak of Uzumaki blood red was visible near his forehead. Naruto's eyes were a deep, royal purple color that gave him a regal appearance, and he had the facial characteristics of the Uchiha clan, with his soft but angular bone structure and pale skin tone. He appeared delicate, but they'd discovered that his muscle tissue was compacted and highly flexible. In other words, looks were definitely deceiving. His frown deepened as he debated his options. How do I choose who to seal the chakra and who to seal the soul into? Whether it was chance or fate, or whatever else you may call it, Minato glanced to his daughter, and seeing so much of himself in her, he decided. Yumi would have the chakra. The eventuality that she could use the chakra was higher in Uzumaki women, and Naruto would house the soul. His daughter's vitals were stronger than Naruto's at birth, so the plan was set. Minato flashed back to a struggling Gamabunta's head. About time, Minato, the giant toad boomed. Do you have a plan? Minato nodded. Yes, I shall use an experimental seal and split the Kyuubi, separating it from its chakra by sealing the separated pieces into my children. Gamabunta frowned. That's not a good idea, Minato. The Kyuubi is older than even the Toad clan, and to separate or alter him in any way could bring forth a multitude of untold problems. Minato ignored the toad and began the hand seals required for the seal. Minato was vaguely aware of Hiruzen Sarutobi, his predecessor in the Sandaime, the third Hokage, coordinating the strikes to slow the Kyuubi down, and as he finished the hand seals he shouted for everyone to fall back. Seal! He boomed and watched in morbid fascination as the Kyuubi howled in pain as he was ripped apart and sealed within the children on the ceremonial altar of the Uzumaki sealing masters. Minato grinned tiredly to himself. It worked. I don't believe it, it actually worked. He'd spoken too soon, as almost instantly after uttering the words, a sudden backlash of dense and powerful energy rippled between the two children. It caused the soul of the Kyuubi to funnel into Yumi. Desperate to escape, Kyuubi grasped onto the only available chakra it could, Naruto's chakra. The seal's backlash was too powerful though, and the result was the seal taking Naruto's chakra along with Kyuubi's soul. Both children screamed to the heavens, and Minato acted quickly by using the Hack no Fuin Shiki, 8 trigram divination seal, to suppress and subdue the out-of-control chakra. Minato hastily placed Naruto down and turned his complete attention to his daughter Yumi. The angry chakra of the Kyuubi was spiraling around her in warning, but eventually the new seal worked, and it slowly seeped into his daughter and calmed. With his complete attention on Yumi, or if he'd been paying attention to his son's face, he'd have witnessed the impossibility of Sharingan eyes in place of his son's royal purple eyes, each with a single tomos spinning ominously before Naruto succumbed to exhaustion. Minato looked pensively at his two children. What could have gone wrong? I warned you, Minato, Gamabunta spoke as he nursed his newly acquired scar. One does not simply mess with a being older than time and bend it to his will. Gamabunta dispelled seconds later his intention to receive healing from the Toad clan. Minato gazed at the empty space that his summon had occupied moments earlier, and simply pondered the parting words of his old friend and summon. Minato stood proudly over the villagers as he informed them of the reason why the Kyuubi was gone, but in his desperation to explain, he informed the village that the soul was sealed into his son Naruto, but they'd listen to him, right? The village would treat both his children with respect, right? If he looked behind him, he would have seen a highly disappointed Sandaime looking on the scene, along with a frowning Jiraiya and Tsunade. They only hoped that Minato wasn't making a terrible mistake. It was impossible. It was impossible, but the facts were right there in Tsunade's face. 6 years after the sealing of the Kyuubi and its subsequent backfire, it was discovered that Minato's mistake had drained practically all of the chakra from Naruto's tiny little body. It's simply inconceivable, Tsunade muttered in shock. The impossibility, to which Tsunade was referring to, was the fact that she was currently looking into Sharingan eyes. It simply shouldn't have been possible, but here she was, staring into the Sharingan eyes of her godson. It's like they're running on an alternative source of power, Tsunade thought out loud. The Sharingan cannot work without chakra though. I don't understand. Let it be known that when Tsunade Senju didn't understand something, she obsessed over whatever it was until she had solved the mystery of what she didn't understand. Not to mention that being an Uzumaki should have been enough to overwrite the Uchiha clan's Kekkai Genkai bloodline limit. With its own, she continued to mutter. The potency of the Uzumaki DNA must have been mutated beyond my calculations. Tsunade was more than certain that the impossibility that Naruto had become would only lead to further surprises. She was already aware of his astounding IQ, as he was already speaking like a young adult, and could comprehend Tsunade's statements and explanations. Explanations that said child had been keenly following. Is it really impossible that I can use the Sharingan, Tsunade-sama? Naruto inquired softly. Tsunade blinked as she suddenly realized that she had been vocalizing her thoughts. Naruto, you don't have to be so formal with me. I apologize, Tsunade-sama, but despite the amount of time you spend with my family, I don't know you well enough to address you with anything less formal. Naruto responded plainly. Tsunade opened her mouth to refute the boy's statement, but snapped her mouth shut almost as quickly. He was right. The only interaction with her godson that she willingly sought was when she treated the boy like a science project, just like their current situation. I am so very sorry, Naruto-kun, she responded sadly. I haven't been the best godmother, have I? You are a busy woman, Tsunade-sama, Naruto intoned quickly. I hold nothing against you. This simple statement caused tears to form in Tsunade's eyes. Her godson was so mature. Was he always that mature? She'd never witnessed Naruto actually act like a child, and the only interaction that his parents had with the chakraless boy was at mealtimes, if they remembered to feed him. She often found him alone, eating at the small Ichiraku ramen stand, but even they didn't interact with him. They didn't know him enough to be familiar with him. Oh, they were professionals in that they were polite and welcoming, but that was all they were. Naruto, I swear to you right now that I will spend more time with you, Tsunade declared to him. And not just to discover the secrets of why you have the Sharingan, or how you can use it. I will be what I should have been all along, your godmother. Will you give me that chance? Naruto stared at the Senju impassively, but he couldn't deny the warm bubbling feeling in his stomach at her words. He was still a child, and his desire for love and warmth found him nodding to Tsunade in agreement to her question. Tsunade smiled a teary smile and opted to lightly ruffle Naruto's raven black hair. Now how about we get something to eat? Tsunade suggested cheerfully. My apprentice Shizen is about to have her lunch break and I always eat with her. We can all eat together. Naruto mutely nodded again and they left her office in search of Shizen. They found her in the reception area of the hospital waiting for Tsunade, and she visibly perked up when spotting the blonde Senju. She blinked as she saw Naruto walking silently with her and mentally frowned. Isn't that the Hokage's son Naruto? She questioned herself. Her mental question was answered as Tsunade introduced him and cheerfully informed her that Naruto would be joining them for lunch. This time, Shizen's frown found its way onto her face. She didn't particularly feel like spending her lunch break watching over a child with her mentor. She had seen how the Hokage's brat of a daughter behaved, and she'd heard things about the only son of the Hokage, and how he was worse than Yumi was. Her inner thoughts were interrupted by the very boy that her thoughts were trained on. I appreciate the offer for lunch, Tsunade-sama, he replied sadly. But perhaps it would be best for me to leave you and your apprentice in peace. I shall eat elsewhere, as there are also few establishments that would allow me entrance. He bowed to Tsunade and then turned to Shizen, her heart suddenly feeling very heavy with guilt. A pleasure to make your acquaintance, Kato-san, and forgive me for intruding on your pre-existing lunch plans. Naruto spoke with a slight hitch in his voice. A hitch she'd heard frequently from children that came to the hospital and acted confidently. Before she could take her words back, he bowed as respectively as he'd done to her mentor and fled the scene surprisingly quickly for a boy his age. Wait, Naruto! Her mentor cried out after the boy, before she turned a furious gaze to her apprentice. I'm highly disappointed in you, Shizen. With those words, Tsunade marched off back to her office as she knew that hunting Naruto down wasn't a good plan due to his independent mentality. Shizen swallowed the lump in her throat and turned to slowly walk back to her own office. She wasn't hungry now. The next time either woman saw him was when his next scheduled appointment came about. Shizen saw him first, as she was assigned to man the reception area as one of the nurses was sick. Naruto merely approached the reception and informed her that he was there to meet with Tsunade for his monthly checkup. He then turned and found a seat. She watched as those already waiting in the reception area all awkwardly shuffled to seats further away from Naruto, and that Naruto noticed. Naruto's only visible reaction was the slight twitch of his eyebrow, and that alarmed Shizen. It was disturbing to think that a child could shut down enough of his emotions to react so minutely to such an obvious display of disgust from the populace. As a doctor that specialized in mental health, it wasn't a good sign. It suddenly dawned on her that if that was how the public reacted to Naruto's presence, then it made sense that they'd be biased and say things that painted the boy in an unfavorable light, and she'd actually believed what they said about him. Shizen suddenly felt sick and her kunoichi training kicked into overdrive as she observed the raven-haired boy more closely. He often appeared at the hospital with bruises and severe swelling of certain limbs, and she used to think that he was just a clumsy, accident-prone child. She knew better now. Her first official interaction with the boy replayed in her mind over and over again, and she released a heavy breath. She had let the village's ignorance and unnecessary hatred lead her to be rude and judge the boy before properly knowing him, and he had been so polite to her. Her inner doctor told her that he had been overly polite, a defense mechanism she realized, easier for him to be overly polite and seem unassuming than for him to act out and stand out in the crowd like his twin sister. She forced down the urge to run over and hug the boy. It wouldn't do any good, and it could force an even larger rift to form if she did, but the maternal instincts within her were screaming to comfort the boy. Naruto Uzumaki, Namikaze? Tsunade could be heard asking. Both she and Naruto looked up and Shizen watched with a tired and longing expression as he quietly walked to follow her mentor, though the slight limp in his walk was noticed by both her and her mentor. Naruto twitched as he felt Shizen's intense gaze on him. What exactly did he do to incur her ire? He didn't know, but it was getting harder for the 9-year-old to focus on remaining impassive. The villagers he could handle, he'd been doing it since he was 4 years old after all, but Shizen's gaze was different. He didn't dare look the dark-haired woman in the eye though, lest it break the fragile hold that he had on his emotions. Naruto Uzumaki, Namikaze? He heard Tsunade ask. There was a slight hitch in her tone, and he knew that the wounds that he had thought he'd hidden had been discovered. Sighing, Naruto stood and moved to follow his godmother. He did his best to walk normally, but he knew both Tsunade and Shizen, who was still watching him, had seen his limp. I guess I can't escape the inevitable conversation, Naruto mused thoughtfully. He was right. For the moment that he'd entered her office, Tsunade had activated the privacy seals and was then scanning his body in one swift movement. He heard her sniffle softly as she scanned his body, and he concluded that she was scanning him with a much stronger technique than that of the standard one. It meant that she now likely knew of the bones that had been broken or dislocated at some point. Those had been treated by the ordinary doctors before he started having specialized appointments with Tsunade. He winced as she grabbed his shoulders firmly and looked him in the eyes. The intensity of her gaze broke the fragile hold, and before he knew it, he had tears silently pouring down his cheeks. He opened his mouth to explain, but all that came out was a strangled sob, and before he knew it, he was being hugged by Tsunade. He'd forgotten the last time he'd received a hug, and the warmth that filled him from such a simple act of intimacy broke his emotional hold completely. He cried himself to exhaustion in his godmother's arms. Once he was out cold, Tsunade gently placed him on her office couch and healed him as best as she could. She took a blood sample to analyze and called for Shizen. Shizen appeared far quicker than it should have taken her, and Tsunade realized that she must have been ready for anything after seeing Naruto in the reception area. Shizen took a single look at her mentor and knew something was wrong. Tsunade-sama, what's wrong? Tsunade didn't answer. She merely handed Shizen the findings from her technique and watched as Shizen broke down. Oh Kami, are these accurate? Shizen asked shakily, though she knew it was a foolish question to ask considering that it was Tsunade's technique that had been used. Tsunade nodded solemnly as she unsealed a bottle of her strongest sake. Shizen sat in the empty chair in front of Tsunade's desk and took the bottle from her mentor. Instead of disposing of it like she'd usually do, she took a huge swig of the alcohol and slammed the bottle down on Tsunade's desk. I can't believe I let those vile people color my opinion of him. Shizen hiccuped as she sobbed. Broken and dislocated bones and joints. Torn muscles and nerves from stabbings or beatings, and they're only the current issues. Tsunade followed her apprentice's example and took a much larger gulp of the burning liquid. Yes, Shizen, and I should have seen it earlier. I mean, I'm supposed to be one of the greatest medics to exist, and I couldn't even see that my godson was suffering. Shizen heaved a breath and glanced to Naruto's sleeping form. What are we going to do, Tsunade-sama? I mean, there's no way that Hokage-sama doesn't know about this, alright? Tsunade frowned and took another mouthful of sake. Actually, if my suspicions are correct, I don't think Minato's even noticed Naruto at all. He's too focused on Yumi. Then what are we going to do? Shizen gulped. First things first, I need to summon Jiraiya, Tsunade decided. He needs to know about this. But I need you to find Mikoto Uchiha and inform her that she needs to meet with me as soon as possible. Shizen all but rushed out the door to follow Tsunade's instructions. The sooner she did, the sooner that poor boy could begin to recover. Naruto's life was truly about to begin. 2 years later, Naruto stared on in distaste as his twin sister, Yumi, was once again being doted upon by her parents. The sight made him sick, and he hissed as he watched her perform a chakra blast. They were congratulating her on a fluke, even though he couldn't use chakra. He could see that she had performed that chakra blast by accident, as she had been originally attempting a chakra control exercise. They were fools, all three of them. He personally refused to call the trio of idiots his parents and family. He already had a father figure in Jiraiya, two mother figures in Tsunade Senju and Mikoto Uchiha, and a grandfather figure in Hiruzen Sarutobi. Naruto's gaze narrowed and he averted his gaze from the disgusting display in front of him. He had been back in Konoha for less than an hour to collect what little he had left in his room at the Namake's estate. His father had been on a lunch break, so he was meeting Jiraiya later before reporting to the Hokage. Watching Minato use his famous technique to flash away, he picked up the sealing scroll with his belongings and silently left the estate. It had been 2 years since Tsunade made the discovery of his Sharingan, and together, with Mikoto and the Sandaime, they trained and researched the limits of his gifts. Together they discovered that he had an abundance of another energy source in his body. It worked similar to chakra, but it wasn't. Nevertheless, his Sharingan seemed to be compatible with this energy, and as such, he was able to utilize his gift to further confuse them, and like Tsunade had predicted, Naruto did in fact surprise them by awakening a mutated form of the Uzumaki Kekkai Genkai, like his ex-mother's Kongo Fuza, adamant and chains. He had the ability to create constructs made of his unknown power source. They did discover that this power source was spiritual in nature and didn't look like it would run out. Naruto was essentially a battery of this unknown power. Unlike Kushina's chakra chains, however, what he created became completely physical, and as such, creating items like kunai or shuriken would result in actual kunai and shuriken. The limits to his gift were unknown, but Naruto had named his power projection. Hiruzen Sarutobi had agreed it was an appropriate name, considering Naruto had recreated a weaker version of his adamantine staff perfectly with little to no effort at all, though it did cause Naruto to become rather tired, rather quickly. Training was rather simple in nature, weapons with Hiruzen, Sharingan and all of its components with Mikoto, and knowledge with Tsunade. They alternated between each of them, teaching him various jutsu after it was discovered that Naruto had perfect control over the power he used. Performing projected jutsu with his energy had resulted in the jutsu almost doubling in power and efficiency. It proved dangerous, however, when Naruto attempted a simple katan jutsu, fire technique, and almost blew up an entire storage shed on the Sarutobi clan grounds. So to combat the issue of overpowering jutsu, they created a seal that worked similar to Tsunade's infusion, In seal, and 1. It worked by absorbing minute amounts of his energy, and then storing the excess energy so as to prevent overpowering the jutsu he had learned. Its appearance was a diamond on his forehead, just like Tsunade's was, but it was a dark red in color. It didn't stop making Tsunade proud and flattered, as he constantly reminded her that it was because hers was located there, and shaped like a diamond, that his was the same. Naruto smiled at the memory of Tsunade gushing over the similar seal, and its location. She was so happy that I wanted to emulate her in some way. As discovered at his birth, Naruto's muscles were compacted and flexible, and it was during a test of his limits that he had somehow recreated Tsunade's godlike strength. Unlike Tsunade's technique, Naruto's flexibility made his strikes faster and far more unpredictable than Tsunade's style. By incorporating his newfound strength into his weapons training, it resulted in producing devastating results. The destroyed training field where he was tested was a testament to said results. During his training with weapons, Naruto and his teachers discovered that Naruto possessed an affinity and favored two weapons above all others: the bow and dual blades. He was already deadly accurate, and never missed a target with kunai and shuriken, but his skill with the bow never failed to cause a shiver of fear to go down their spines. He was so accurate with his bow that he could pick a target off from almost 900 meters with 100% accuracy and deadly results. It only got worse when Naruto, with curious teachers, got permission to incorporate the Sharingan into his skills. The results enabled him to make kill shots from a kilometer from the target with 100% accuracy. Taking shots any further than that resulted in mixed results, with far more misses than hits. He resolved to increase his accuracy to increase his range. Naruto studied weapons like a man possessed. He studied ancient weapons, modern weapons, mythical weapons, and everything in between. It was through this that he met an aspiring kunoichi that wanted to specialize in weapons. Her name was Tenten Higurashi, and she was the only daughter of Konoha's best blacksmith, Kuro Higurashi. Kuro was a genius with metal and wood and anything else you could make weapons with. Though he often said that the best blacksmith in Hai no Kuni, the land of fire, was a man simply known as the blacksmith, said man only worked with the ninja guardians of the imperial city, and was under the direct command of the fire daimyo, Masahiko Shinji. He and Tenten became fast friends, and they would be seen often just talking or discussing the various pros and cons of weapons. It still brought a fond smile to his face as he thought upon the times they argued about his bows compared to standard throwing weapons, such as kunai or shuriken. It was around that time that I personally requested Kuro train me to properly understand metals for my projections, Naruto thought with a small smile. He was ecstatic to do so, but that was when Tenten stopped being so friendly. How was I supposed to know that Kuro would only teach me and not Tenten until she was ready? He sighed sadly as he thought about how she'd blown up at him, accusing him of taking her rightful inheritance as a Higurashi clan member. Naruto rarely forgave people who crossed a certain line, and when Tenten had used the knowledge of his childhood, the knowledge that he'd shared as they were close friends, against him, he simply bowed to Kuro and abdicated his position as student for her sake. She was horrified when she learned that Naruto wasn't her father's apprentice, and was just learning about metals from him. She had tried to apologize, but he would merely bow and excuse himself. Tenten was distraught as children her age often avoided her due to her likes and hobbies. He still exclusively used the Higurashi weapons store, but he never asked for lessons again. Kuro was dismayed as he felt that Naruto had amazing potential as a blacksmith, and since they were working on Naruto's pet project until Tenten's hasty accusation, he was disappointed in his daughter and devastated when Naruto paid for their joint work and left with all of his project details. Out of respect to Naruto, he never tried to recreate their data, but he knew that should Naruto successfully create the weapons that he wanted, then he'd have surpassed him as a blacksmith. The only weapons that he could picture being as strong as Naruto's idea were the 7 ninja swords of the mist. As a sort of experiment/graduation for his skills, Naruto had personally challenged himself with the task of creating his own unique weapons for close-range combat. He hadn't informed his teachers of this personal challenge, as he didn't want to bother his family in all but blood beyond what he was currently doing. Naruto could already create any bow that he had seen, even only once, so to create his very own set of swords was a challenge for the youth. It took Naruto 8 months to design them, with help from Kuro of course. He never knew that Kuro was so impressed with his plans, that he wanted to help further by teaching Naruto more about forging weapons, but after the Tenten incident he felt the need to finish his plans alone. In the end I failed to create the weapons from my designs, Naruto sighed with frustration marring his face. What I created were amazingly powerful weapons, true, but they weren't what I originally wanted. In the end, when he managed to create his own swords, it was with his teachers and they would never forget the sheer power that rolled off of them. Naruto didn't know it at the time, but they would later be known as legendary weapons, as all 3 of his teachers had at one point or rather, encountered the one of the Kiri no Shinobigatana Shishinen Shu, the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. They knew a legendary weapon when they saw one, and while Naruto felt his creations bordered on failures, the trio of teachers knew better. I didn't realize that they would be so powerful, Naruto mused. They became my favorite weapons before I knew it. They're not what I originally wanted, but they're amazing nonetheless. Naruto named them Kansho and Bakuya, twin swords that, to him, represented yin and yang. They were noted by his teachers as being quite big and heavy, but they suited Naruto perfectly and complemented his unique style of fighting. They were identical in shape, with the only difference being their color. Kansho, the black yang sword, was covered in a hexagonal pattern, and Bakuya, the white yin sword, had less of the shine of a polished metal on it, and really had the color that represented the haze of a cloud. Naruto's deadliest creation, however, was a jutsu/attack that he had dubbed the Gate of Babylon. It truly terrified Tsunade, Mikoto and the Sandaime due to the destruction that it caused when he demonstrated it to them. It worked as the ultimate version of his projection style by creating hundreds, if not thousands of weapons at random in any design that he'd already crafted before, and then sending them at incredible speeds at his foes. It scared the Sandaime more because with Naruto's Sharingan, an already deadly aim, the results were catastrophic to any that would incur Naruto's fury. When they'd asked why he called it the Gate of Babylon, Naruto had replied with, "History of the elemental nations showed that before ninjutsu was introduced to the people, the nations were united and ruled by a king that craved treasure, and the best of weapons, his treasury, was called the treasures of Babylon. So I call it that due to the unlimited blades, spears, lances, axes, etc. that I can launch, and you have to admit that they look like they are materializing from what appears to be a gate." The downside to his deadly technique was that it drained him too much, so working with his teachers, they worked on incorporating space/time ninjutsu to use a sort of pocket dimension, similar to the Mangekyo Sharingan's Kamui technique, to store already crafted weapons. This was so he didn't need to waste time creating them every time he wanted to use his ultimate technique. It was Tsunade's donation of the Journal of the Nidaime Hokage, the second Hokage, that proved to hold the answers they needed to complete the space/time ninjutsu seal for Naruto to use his ultimate technique. His training continued for another year in such a manner, and already the Sandaime had given his personal opinion in stating that, other than needing experience, Naruto was already a mid-chunin level shinobi, if not high chunin, and while that was with his Sharingan and unique jutsu/attacks, it was impressive from one of his age, and that with time, he could only grow as a shinobi and a person. "I still doubt that I'm high chunin level," Naruto thought with a frown. "I'm possibly mid-chunin level at my strongest. Then again, I haven't fought an opponent to gauge my real level." When Jiraiya returned to update Minato of his spy network's intelligence, he had been impressed with Naruto's progress, and with permission from Minato, though he never understood why he wanted Naruto. He had taken Naruto with him outside of the village to experience the outside world. He was astounded when Naruto terminated an enemy ninja from IWA, or the Hidden Stone Village, with extreme prejudice, and with what he thought was with ease. He was wrong though, Naruto thought with another frown. "I almost died during that fight, and I was extremely lucky to survive." Jiraiya had given the bounty on the B-ranked missing ninja to Naruto as a way of apology, as he'd been at a brothel, and was sworn to secrecy on the matter from Naruto himself. Naruto had only one demand from the Sannin on their journey to visit Yuzushiogakure, village hidden by whirling tides, in Yuzu no Kuni, land of whirlpools. Jiraiya had immediately understood Naruto's reasons, for as long as Naruto was alive, his parents had all but ignored him in favor of their daughter, Yumi. For you see, Jiraiya made the terrible mistake of informing Minato of the Great Toad Elder's prophecy in which a child born of two great ninja with a terrible burden would either save or destroy the ninja world. Naruto's reaction to the truth was to simply shrug and move on, though he did ignore Jiraiya for 3 weeks after that. Naruto's desire to travel to Yuzu was further fueled because he'd grown up with stories of the great Uzumaki clan and their main rule: never abandon a fellow Uzumaki. Naruto had already decided to drop his father's name and simply be known as Naruto Uzumaki for that very reason. They'd abandoned him, their own blood, to a life of misery and pain. TCH, never abandon a fellow Uzumaki, my ass, Naruto hissed. Damn hypocrites, spouting about that and family and then acting the way they do. The villagers had not taken to his presence well as they blamed him and thought of him as the Kyuubi in human form, because of the announcement, all those years prior. Naruto never defended himself from the mobs because if he did then Konoha would be in for a massacre. Once they'd arrived in Yuzu, Naruto set about exploring, and imagine his surprise when he stumbled onto the very treasure trove that he'd based his ultimate technique on was the king that ruled the lands and ancestor of the Uzumaki clan? Naruto liked to imagine that he was and stored the weapons and treasure in another pocket dimension separate from his gate of Babylon. One thing was for sure, Naruto would never have to worry about money ever again. Something that piqued his interest was a summoning scroll that laid innocently in the center of the treasure chamber, and without thinking twice he signed it in his blood and immediately disappeared in a poof of smoke. Naruto stood on a deserted plain that appeared to be a desert as far as his eyes could see. He activated his Sharingan, and spotted an oasis and cave network in the distance, and proceeded to head over to it. He was startled by a feral growling. He hadn't sensed any presences seconds before, meaning that their stealth was incredible and far beyond his skills. Naruto glanced over to the source of the growling and was instantly on edge as before him stood a pack of giant jackals. They were black in color, and their bodies were defined by lines of gold around their eyes and ears. And 2. Identify yourself at once, human, the largest snarled. You smell like our ancient summoner Gilgamesh, but you are most certainly not him. I am Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto responded promptly. I discovered my ancestors' chambers and your summoning scroll was amongst the treasures. The large jackal stared Naruto down before approaching. Let me taste your blood, human, and I shall discover the truth to your words. Without hesitation, but a little nervousness, Naruto held him arm out and grimaced slightly when the jackal sunk his razor-sharp teeth into his arm. Interesting, your words are indeed the truth, human, the jackal spoke. And you possess the same power as your ancestor. Perhaps you are his reincarnation. Very well, you may approach our den and be judged by our clan's leader and sage. Naruto resisted the urge to gulp and followed the jackal into the giant cave that sat next to the oasis. Naruto shivered in fear as he beheld the boss of their clan, as he was roughly the same size as a Bijou and smelled like death itself. I am Anubis, the leader of the jackal clan, he intoned with a scratchy voice that caused another shiver down Naruto's spine. I sensed you the moment you entered the treasure chamber of our first summoner, King Gilgamesh. You smell so similar to him. I know why you ventured here, mortal, and I find myself pleased by the aura you possess. I grant you permission to be our clan's newest summoner. Naruto stood there gaping at the giant jackal before he remembered his manners, and he bowed his head in respect. I thank you, Lord Anubis, for your blessing. Anubis snorted and eyed the human child. Your skills are strong. I can taste it in the air as the scent of your blood fills this cavern, but you are not strong enough to learn our clan's skills. I shall decide at a later date when you're worthy of such an honor. Do not disappoint me, Naruto Uzumaki. With that, Naruto found himself being forced back to his world, where he found himself waking up in his sleeping bag with an extremely worried Jiraiya hovering over his form. Oh, Kami Tsunade will kill me if you don't wake up, brat, he nervously spoke, more to himself than to Naruto, but after spotting his waking form he danced for joy. I won't be castrated by an angry medicine, yes. Naruto looked on impassively before grinning to his godfather and simply saying, I now have summons. Jiraiya's eyes bulged and he looked at Naruto in shock. You're serious, aren't you, brat? Well, which clan are you aligned with? Naruto resisted the urge to smirk as he heard the undertone of excitement in his godfather's tone. The Jackal clan has accepted me, Jiraiya choked on a breath. If that's true, then a truly terrifying and legendary clan is back. Gee, good for you, brat, but despite this happy news we've been called back to Konoha. Naruto nodded and shook off the dizziness that he was feeling. Let's go then. Tsunade and the Sandaime stood waiting at the main gate for the return of Naruto and Jiraiya. In the year that they were gone, the two of them had grown upset at the village that they were once happy to protect. When the villagers discovered that Naruto had left, they celebrated every night for almost a month, and it disgusted the duo. The main reason for their fury, though, was Minato Namikaze and the rest of the Namikaze family. Kushina hadn't even thought twice on the matter and dropped the Uzumaki from her name, thus forfeiting the rights to her clan's compounds and their seat on the council. Tsunade in particular was pissed at the decision, as now the council was attempting to obtain the wealth of the Uzumaki clan to fill their pockets with. The only people standing in their way were Naruto's surrogate family. They wished that Mikoto could be there, but lately the Uchiha clan had grown distant, and it concerned the Sandaime greatly. He'd heard the rumors, of course, that the Uchiha clan was responsible for unleashing the Kyuubi, but he didn't believe that the actions of a single Uchiha should condemn the entire clan. He was brought out of thoughts when Tsunade jumped happily and made her way over to her son in all but blood. She eyed his appearance with approval. At least he hadn't inherited his sister's strange taste in clothing. Naruto now wore ANBU-issued black pants that were taped off near the feet, and his feet were covered by standard-issue black ninja sandals. He wore a black, sleeveless shirt and over that, a red sleeveless hoodie. His hair had grown out, and she was positive that if it was down from its style then it would reach his lower back. His smooth, black hair was tied in a high ponytail reminiscent of swordsmen of the Uzumaki clan from the past, and his blood-red streak fell over his right eye with his straight fringe and bangs. Despite not needing them, he had a kunai pouch strapped onto both legs, as he was ambidextrous and had a single shuriken pouch on his belt. Naruto spotted the two-seasoned ninja and sprinted over to be engulfed in a warm hug courtesy of Tsunade. "I missed you so much, Tsunade-ka-chan." "I miss you too, Sochi," Tsunade happily replied. "Where's Mikoto-ka-san?" he asked after scanning the crowd. "She's having clan problems right now, so she couldn't greet you," she softly responded. "Oh, okay, I'll just have to visit her later then," Naruto replied with a grin before he spotted the Sandaime patiently waiting. "Ah, sorry Aji-san, I miss you too," the Sandaime chuckled. "Not a problem, my boy. How was the training trip?" "It went perfectly, Aji-san," he responded cheerfully. "I'll tell you all about it later, but we have to report to Hokage-sama." The Sandaime winced at the bland tone that Naruto used at the last statement. "Oh Minato, how you've fallen if you can't see the prodigy in front of you." "That's right, brat," Jiraiya spoke up. "Go gather your things from the Namikaze estate, and meet me back here, then we'll go report in." The two turned, and after another hug from Tsunade, they went their separate ways, Naruto to gather the rest of his things, and Jiraiya to wherever he was going. He spotted Jiraiya waiting near the giant gate of Konoha, and he smiled at the old pervert. "You're actually early?" "Shut up, brat, we have to report to the Hokage," Jiraiya responded, though there was a hint of something in his voice that had Naruto on edge. Whenever he uses that tone, it means trouble, Naruto thought, his gaze subtly taking in his surroundings. No immediate threats, so I must remain on guard. It still amazes me that he hasn't realized he uses a tone whenever he's nervous about something. The duo turned and made their way to the Hokage tower. From behind his desk, Minato Namikaze stood gazing upon Konoha as the morning light from the sun rose. The bright light never failed to light a spark that made the sky seem like it was on fire. He often partook of this simple pleasure because it reminded him of the will of fire, the very same teaching that his predecessor, the Sandaime, religiously preached, just as the Shodaime, first Hokage, the legendary Hashirama Senju before him taught. As Minato stood there, he found his gaze traveling to a sudden flash of white. He shifted his gaze and spotted his teacher Jiraiya walking cheerfully towards the Hokage tower. The man that he called sensei was strangely on time, even with an official summons from the Hokage. Minato's focused gaze then traveled to his teacher's companion. Was his companion the reason for the lack of tardiness of his sensei? It took a moment to realize that the companion in question was none other than his son, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Minato frowned as he gazed upon his only son. He knew that he neglected his child, but after so long with so little communication between father and son, he could accurately say that they were more strangers than they were family. The thought caused an intense ripple of guilt to pulse through his body. It wasn't Naruto's fault that they weren't close, but he appeased the feeling of unease due to his abuse of using his ANBU to send reports on him. It turned out that he was close with the Sandaime and the two remaining Sannin. His son Naruto was well cared for, and in the end, even as an estranged father, that was all he ever could have provided or wanted for his son. He watched the pair and perked up as Naruto must have said something embarrassing to Jiraiya, as the toad Sannin turned red-faced and tried to get a hold of the surprisingly agile boy. Naruto simply weaved through Jiraiya's half-hearted and playful attacks with practiced ease. Seconds later, both Jiraiya and Naruto were laughing quietly with each other, and Minato could practically taste the feeling of genuine love and care that the scene displayed. Unbidden to the Yondaime, a soft smile appeared on his face. Naruto appeared to be a happy child, and the scene reminded him of when he was younger and trained and traveled with the toad Sannin. Minato was considered a smart man, a genius to most, but he knew deep down that any attempt to reconcile or connect on a personal level with his estranged son would only end badly. Kushina had been asking about him frequently these days, as she too had felt that they hadn't done their duty to him as parents. However, just like her husband, she knew that it would be counterproductive, and indeed insulting, to try and bring Naruto back into their family. In the end, they had no idea where to start. Bringing Naruto even the tiniest bit closer to the family was going to be difficult. The sole reason for this conclusion came from the Uzumaki clan charter. Despite the Uzumaki creed of never abandoning their own, it was the charter of the clan that demanded that if the clan had dwindled to a single member, then certain actions had to be followed to the exact letter of their laws. Kushina had decided that it was time to act, as it became important to follow that law and pass on legacy of the Uzumaki clan onto her children. The Uzumaki clan charter was clear. If the clan member was male, then they swore to the blood of their ancestors to guard the accumulated knowledge and assets of the Uzumaki clan, as well as taking the mantle of king. This meant that the sole male would then be known as the clan head of the Uzumaki clan and daimyo of Yuzu, along with all that entailed. The Uzumaki were firm and stubborn, and that meant that the Uzumaki stood for their principles regardless of whom they faced, be it a common villager, royalty, or nobility, even the Hokage and his or her council. If the sole survivor was male, then he faced the world alone and had to stand firm in the ways of the Uzumaki clan. If the remaining member was female, they were to act as retainers to the clan's assets, and then, despite the sexism of the charter, the firstborn male child of the last female was to inherit the rights and responsibilities to the clan. So in accordance with the old laws, the moment that Naruto was born, and being the elder of the twins, he took the mantle of king. Following those old laws and she obeying tradition, Kushina resigned her status as an Uzumaki and took her husband's last name. She wouldn't be forced to sever all ties to the Uzumaki clan, as they were her family regardless, but if the king was to summon her to combat or service, she had no grounds to refuse. Unfortunately, it also meant the possibility of fighting people that she called friend or family. Her very blood demanded her obedience. And that was why she was feeling the way she did in regards to their eldest child, as in their inaction to bond with Naruto, they'd unintentionally made him a flight risk. If their son decided to leave, then they couldn't stop him without causing an international incident. Even the daimyo of the Land of Fire himself was eagerly waiting for their son to take up his status as king, as there was much to discuss, as trade treaties and fealty were suspended until he did so. It wasn't commonly known, but the Fire Daimyo's family was only in power due to the actions of the Uzumaki clan's ancestor King Gilgamesh, and as such, the fealty owed to Naruto upon his crowning was a debt that could crush the Land of Fire, should Naruto desire to bankrupt the large nation. So yes, the Fire Daimyo was eager, or rather desperate, to discuss urgent matters with Naruto, so the daimyo would gladly take in their son, but they'd likely never see him again once he tasted the life of a noble, or so they thought. Their only consolation was that Naruto hadn't reached adulthood, or if he had chosen to become a ninja 13 years old, Naruto would then have to appoint a trusted friend or family member to act as a steward until he achieved either age or profession. Kushina was nervous for Naruto's return so that he could be officially inducted and informed. The Council of Konoha, however, had been attempting to seize the assets of the Uzumaki clan in order to bolster the funds and influence of the village. But with Tsunade Senju and the Sandaime, who had retaken his clan's council seat defending the rights of the clan, the council was thwarted in their efforts each and every time. But it was only a matter of time before they got really creative and discovered a way to get what they wanted, so it was imperative that he return soon. And that's why I resummoned Jiraiya so soon into the training journey, Minato thought to himself as he was snapped out of his daze by the sight of his son looking in his direction, and despite the distance, Minato could feel the penetrating gaze of his son. Coughing nervously, Minato turned and retook his seat at the Hokage's desk and reviewed the paperwork left by his Kage Bunshin, shadow clone, after they'd sorted through the previous mountain of paperwork. It was less than 5 minutes later that there was a polite knock at the door. Who could that be? Minato pondered in confusion. Jiraiya would have just barged through the window. Imagine his surprise when a well and truly cowed-looking Jiraiya entered his office with his son. Naruto calmly walked beside him, the perfect picture of poise and grace. I apologize for our tardiness, Hokage-sama, Naruto informed Minato politely with a formal bow. You see, my teacher Jiraiya of the Sine wished to further his research rather than to report to you in a timely manner. Well, that sounds like Jiraiya, alright. Minato sighed in resignation. I guess I'll never change. I told you, Brad, it would have been fine. Jiraiya spoke cheerfully as he tried to soothe an irritated Naruto. We had all day to report. I thought you told that to Tsunade to help further my research. Naruto's eyebrow twitched and he leveled a glare at the toad sage from the corner of his eye. Jiraiya gulped nervously before hastily adding to his statement. I know that you don't like my research, but hey, don't glare at me like that, brat. Minato couldn't help but smile, and he failed to suppress the snort and chuckle that escaped his throat. The action drew the attention of the room's other occupants, and he watched with internal pride as Naruto not only stood to attention, but had successfully caused Jiraiya to do the same by a single glare. Tsunade must have taught him that glare. Minato chuckled again before addressing the two. At ease, I'm sure that you're both curious as to why I summoned you so soon into your training trip? Jiraiya hummed in agreement, but Minato was surprised by Naruto, who responded verbally with, No, I assume this a clan matter? Minato's face took on a serious expression as he nodded. Yes, there are immediate concerns that need to be addressed at once. I'm glad you managed to wrestle Jiraiya into getting here quickly, as there's a council meeting in 30 minutes, and you have no choice to attend. Naruto. Is this a full council meeting, Hokage-sama? Naruto inquired with suspicion written on his face. Minato nodded grimly and Naruto tilted his head slightly in thought before he replied. Tsunade Senju and Hiruzen Sarutobi are acting members on the council, so I then enact my right to be escorted by my teacher Jiraiya of the Sanine, as I am still considered a minor. Minato stared at Naruto in shock while Jiraiya smirked. Don't be so surprised. Minato Tsunade had him memorize every single law from every country so that he'd be prepared for this type of outcome. Minato let out an ironic laugh. Typical Tsunade has made sure he knows exactly what he needs to know now. That's perfect. I expect the council to try and pull a stunt or two so you understanding the laws will only throw them off guard. They were interrupted by the Hokage's assistant and Tsunade's niece Shizen Kato as she rushed in to inform them that the council had tried to move the time for the council meeting forward by 15 minutes or so. Naruto narrowed his eyes and a frown of displeasure made its way onto his face. They would dare insult the Hokage like this? He hissed as his glare narrowed dangerously, something that had both Minato and Jiraiya shivering, as the image of a furious Tsunade floated over his form. Tsunade just had to teach him that glare, Jiraiya groaned exasperatedly. Minato, though, was genuinely shocked by the statement, and couldn't stop himself from finally asking the question that he had wanted to since they first arrived. Do you hate our home and family? He whispered. Naruto blinked before he glanced at his father, and for a minute or two a tense silence descended upon the Hokage's office. No, Naruto replied just as quietly. I don't hate you or mother or Yumi for that matter. Naruto paused to think of how he wanted to continue. He'd dreamt how this conversation would go hundreds of times prior to this with emotions ranging from hatred and rage to a detached impassiveness, but now, when it mattered most, he found himself struggling. Jiraiya decided to remain silent. It wasn't his place to intervene in this moment. He spared a glance to Minato and instantly spotted the anxious expression as the tension in the room grew thicker. It felt like an eternity before Naruto continued. Or rather, I honestly don't know if I hate you or not, Naruto replied. I feel bitter, no here he sighed. Maybe I can't call it hate. All I feel is a mixture of bitterness and confusion, and then nothing at all at the same time. A truly ugly scowl passed across Naruto's face as he continued though. The village on the other hand, I am not fond of its inhabitants. Their ignorance and behavior is disgusting, and that's being nice. Minato exhaled loudly. I see. I'm sorry about the villagers, but do you think that you could spare the time to visit your mother, I mean to visit Kushina, so that you can hear us out? Naruto pondered the question silently but nodded all the same. That will be fine as long as I can be accompanied by someone of my choice. It's not that I'm distrusting of you, but I would feel far more comfortable with someone that, well, cares more for my best interest, and that's not meant as a hurtful comment, just experience. Minato did wince internally, but it was a logical and perfectly reasonable request. I can agree to your compromise. I don't blame you for asking either. The two shared a moment, with Minato looking down on Naruto, whose blood-red streaked fringe and his black bangs covered his eyes. Thank you, Naruto whispered in a small voice. No, thank you, Naruto, Minato replied. They both coughed awkwardly before Jiraiya reminded them of the council meeting. Both scratched the back of their heads in embarrassment before they left the office to head upstairs to the council chambers. Minato Namikaze flashed to his seat, reserved only for the Hokage, and hid a smirk at the surprise the greedy council members were in for. He eyed the civilian council members with distaste. He had turned a blind eye to their under-the-table deals, and although he had no real intention to call them out, it only hinged on whether or not they tried to pull something today. After all, it was always better to have something over them as blackmail and use it when advantageous. The council members were chatting animatedly with each other, completely unaware of their Hokage's plans for them. The civilian council consisted of 9 elected officials, while the ninja council consisted of Shikaku Nara, Enoichi Yamanaka, Chuza Akimichi, Sum Inuzuka, Shibi Aburame, Tsunade Senju, Hayashi Hyuga, Fugaku Uchiha, and Hiruzen Sarutobi. At the time there were only 3 empty clan seats, and they belonged to the Kurama clan, the Hatake clan, and finally the Uzumaki clan seats that were left empty as they had been inactive for some time. The civilian council immediately decided to begin, but they were cut off seconds later as the giant doors that sealed the room were thrown open and in walked Naruto, along with his teacher Jiraiya. 8 of the civilian council members sneered as he passed them, while the 9th and head of the civilian council members raised a brow before glancing subtly, for a civilian, at the Hokage and then back again. The head of the civilian council members was named Mabuki Haruno. She had never actually taken the time to pay attention to the boy that was supposedly the Kyuubi in human form, but now that she could, all she could see was a young boy that held himself confidently. And with Jiraiya standing protectively behind him, it was clear that what the council wanted wasn't going to go their way today. For years, Mabuki had been subtly diverting the other civilian council members' attention astray since they'd gotten it into their heads that they actually had a right to the Uzumaki clan's vast fortune. It wasn't known, but the Haruno family was once a clan that served the Uzumaki faithfully, but with the absence of the Uzumaki king, they had forgotten their duty and had slowly died off. Mabuki was a Haruno by marriage, but her daughter Sakura was one by blood, and if the king was ever to return, then she'd have to return to service. Could this boy be he? Mabuki pondered as she watched the boy calmly walk forward. I know Sakura is aware of her obligations, but if the child is the new king, then she must be prepared to leave everything she knows behind. Her thoughts were interrupted by Minato coughing loudly, thus drawing the attention of the entire room. Naruto, Jiraiya, Minato spoke, nodding to each of them. You have my thanks for appearing so swiftly. There is something that must be done before we begin this meeting, however. Minato trailed off, and the entire room was shocked when the fire daimyo himself stepped forward out of the shadows, followed closely by Kushina and then by Asuma Sarutobi, who was there as guardian and protector to the fire daimyo. What is the meaning of this? One of the newly elected members shouted. This is a ceremony that should have been completed the day this child was born, boomed the fire daimyo as he glared at the council with a burning hatred. You despicable people, you have dared to try and steal the Uzumaki clan's assets? You pitiful fools have crossed a line that has existed since the very founding of the Land of Fire. The civilian council members shrunk in fear and terror under the daimyo's gaze, but it was Naruto who calmed the situation by coughing loudly himself. If it's not too much trouble, Lord Hokage, Lord Daimyo, Lady Uzumaki, could someone please explain just what is going on here? Kushina winced slightly as he hesitated to say her name, but resolved herself to continue the ceremony. Forgive me, Naruto-kun stepped forward. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto narrowed his gaze. She'd intentionally left out the Namikaze in his name. Just what the hell was going on? Era stepped forward, little king, a voice echoed from his mind. For some inexplicable reason the voice was familiar to him. Like a lost part of himself recognized it, and despite the mocking tone it led him to bypass his confusion to the situation and step forward. However, as Naruto took a single step forward, he immediately found himself surrounded by glowing red seals that covered the floor. The seals smelled of blood and glowed just as ominously. It took a mere glance on the floor around him to instantly realize that he was standing in the exact center of the circular seal. What is the meaning of this? Naruto hissed angrily. He looked to Jiraiya and found the man looking away from his gaze. Answer me. If he was aware of the slightly demonic tone in his voice, Naruto didn't show it, but the others in the room did, and they all gasped as his eyes briefly glowed red to match the seals. Thankfully for Naruto, it wasn't his Sharingan, but it still left the council members shivering. Meanwhile, Minato gasped as his heart clenched. This power, it's not the Kyuubi, but it feels just as oppressive, if not more menacing in nature. Just what is happening? Minato glanced in Kushina's direction and narrowed his gaze. Kushina appeared visibly shaken by the power displayed and the aura surrounding their son's form. Kushina, you said this wouldn't harm Naruto, he hissed. Kushina ignored her husband and shivered as Naruto's furious gaze met hers briefly. They were just like the eyes that her great-grandfather had told her about, the eyes of the king. The seals were awakening the dormant knowledge that all kings were born with. It was said by the elders of the Uzumaki clan that the seals awakened the king from his slumber, as all potential kings had the genetic memory hidden within their genes. But this wasn't the time for pondering that subject, as she had a ceremony to complete. I, Namikaze Kushina, formerly Uzumaki, do hereby relinquish my command as retainer of the Uzumaki clan over to its true king. She spoke clearly as she too stepped forward. It wasn't far enough to stand in the seal, but enough to touch the seal. She drew an old golden dagger and sliced the palm of her hand open before she held out her palm and squeezed the liquid onto the seal. I freely offer my blood as sacrifice to awaken his rights to rule. Kushina winced as the seal accepted her sacrifice, and Naruto screamed as the seals swirled in a mesmerizing pattern. They snaked their way onto his body until every part of his exposed skin was highlighted by the blood-red seals. Kushina was breathed heavily. There was a reason the seal should have been used upon his birth, as it overwrote the child's brainwave patterns to awaken their king. But she couldn't do that to her baby boy, and then later when she had the chance, she'd hesitated as she had seen the bright, intelligent, and gifted child that he'd become, but it was now or never, and this had to be done. She could feel her chakra and blood crying out to stop, but she couldn't stop now or Naruto would die. The seal truly was a barbaric piece of work, but failure to do this would cause untold misfortune to fall upon her family, Naruto included, as the seals settled and dimmed. Kushina clenched her eyes shut. It was over. Naruto was confused. He may be intelligent and highly perceptive, but he was still only 11 years old, and he was in agonizing pain. It felt like red-hot blades were carving the symbols into his skin and bone, and then it reached his head. The seal battled with Naruto as it tried to take control over his mind. He didn't know why, but he felt that presence again. It was whispering to him, commanding him even to give up and hand over his mind to his king, but Naruto resisted. Naruto blinked in confusion as he gazed around the throne room that he had appeared in. It was more a piece of artwork than an actual room, as though only the person who sat upon the throne could truly appreciate the room in its entirety. The walls were all made of stone that, despite its appearance, shone with an almost ethereal light, and the floor was made of marble, with gold carvings and precious jewels ingrained into both the walls and floor. But it was what was on the far side of the room that drew Naruto's attention, for there on the furthest part of the exquisite throne room laid a giant golden throne. Naruto instantly recognized it as he'd seen it in the treasure room in Yuzu. It was a golden throne with a pyramid design. The entire piece of furniture must have been crafted or carved over hundreds of years, as the intricacies were so astounding that it must have taken an entire kingdom's wealth to craft. The attention to detail was incredible, as it also had precious jewels and carvings ingrained into it, but it was the highly comfortable cushioning and exotic furs that drew him in further. Naruto didn't realize it, but before he knew it, he had started to walk across the room, completely transfixed by the throne. As he made his way over, that presence called stronger, as if trying to dissuade the boy from getting distracted by anything else that might possibly draw his attention. Naruto finally reached the throne and looked up the steps that one would have to climb in order to sit on the throne, but just as he was about to climb, Several voices shouted at him to stop. Naruto turned his glazed expression towards the source and snapped out of his trance upon seeing a mirror-like window that showed him the various people that he called precious. Tsunade, Mikoto, Jiraiya and the Sandaime all appeared to be worried as they desperately called to him with words indiscernible to his ears. Why they were calling so desperately, Naruto didn't know, but the sight hurt him deep down in his heart, as he'd been the one to cause them to worry. As he gazed upon their desperation, he noticed that Tsunade and Mikoto were crying. Why were they crying? Jiraiya, he looked murderously towards his ex-mother and father. Why? The Sandaime was releasing untold amounts of Ki, killer intent, to stop others from approaching, Enma in his adamantine staff form in his hands and battle armor on. Why? He was just so confused. His thoughts were interrupted by a single clap. Another followed and then another after that. The clapping grew louder until it echoed throughout the entire throne room. Naruto hesitantly turned to face the sound and all but jumped in fear when he saw a man sitting upon the throne that he'd been so enamored with earlier. On closer examination, the man appeared young, perhaps early to mid-20s, and had golden hair that, like liquid gold, appeared to glow softly. Said golden hair looked soft due to the fact that it blew gracefully with an unseen breeze. He sported a light tan and wore black pants with a long white shirt with a black jacket over that. Naruto was put on edge when the man snapped his eyes open and peered down at him with blood-red eyes and a grin that was clearly amused by the situation. This man was clearly the owner of the throne, for he truly looked like a king. Era, you resisted the call? He spoke in a tone that could only belong to one of noble birth. How amusing, pathetically tiresome, but amusing. Naruto shifted his gaze to the room itself, looking for any escape routes. There was no way in or out, but if that was the case, then where were they and how did the man appear? Had he always been sitting there? Then that meant that the voice from earlier and the call to go to the throne could have only been him. Oh ho, you're quicker than I thought you'd be, the man commented with a chuckle. And your confusion still amuses me. Naruto started to sweat. This man know whatever he is, something about him is familiar but off at the same time. Naruto tried to concentrate on his power, but when it wouldn't respond, fear began to swell in Naruto's mind. It only grew as he realized that his Sharingan wasn't working either. Naruto once again glanced around, looking for anything that he could use for defense. It was when his gaze fell upon the mirror-like window that he realized that it may be an exit. Naruto was subtly shuffling back towards the mirror when a gold missile sailed past his head and shattered the mirror instantly. Now you're being rude. The man spoke in a dangerous tone. Turn and face your king. Naruto gulped and turned only to gasp as behind the man was his Gate of Babylon technique. Oh ho, your technique? He chuckled ominously. Surely a copycat such as yourself can recognize the genuine article. As the man shouted the end of his statement, several more golden portals opened up and weapons that even Naruto had never seen before all floated above the man, and all were aimed at him. Naruto's heartbeat increased. It thumped in his chest like a drumbeat. The weapons shifted to launch. Ba-bump. They launched at him. Move. Ba-bump. They flew straight at him. He needed to move. Ba-bump. They were almost upon him. Move. Ba-bump, 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 ba-bump. Move. Naruto screamed in his head, and then there was pain. It tore through him like wildfire in his veins as his very own Gate of Babylon activated. It was as if his very body was on fire. The pain rippled through him and he felt as though he was being torn in two, but still he chanted the same word in his mind over and over again like a mantra. Move, move, move. Naruto could practically feel the sting of the various weapons on his skin, and he knew that he'd been too slow, so he clenched his eyes shut and waited for the killing blow. Suddenly, over the silence that had descended upon the throne room at his resignation of the end of his existence, he heard a clang, and he reopened his eyes to bear witness to a single of his weapons falling to the marble floor. Seconds later, the weapons aimed at him and poised to kill all vanished in a beautiful shower of gold and blue powder. So you can use it under pressure? He spoke with that irritatingly amused tone of voice. It seems that my reincarnation is worthy of my title. I find this most pleasing indeed. The man eyed him further for a moment before he simply vanished, appearing behind Naruto less than a second later. All Naruto felt was a tingle on his face. Slowly reaching his hand to his cheek, Naruto traced the thin line of blood that was suddenly there, and fear gripped his heart. He was scared, but he wouldn't die yet. He'd find a way out, and he'd see his family again. The man appeared in front of him again as if he hadn't moved and pressed his tongue teasingly to his thumb that had Naruto's blood on it. He tasted it as if savoring a rare vintage of wine before he turned his fierce gaze back to Naruto. Your blood is excellent. He quivered as if adding an insult, but he continued seconds later. I find you worthy, copycat. My name is Gilgamesh, and I am king. Naruto gasped but stood firm. He resisted the urge to step back and flee, and the act of which amused Gilgamesh further. Yes, you will be an excellent heir. Gilgamesh spoke. Listen well, child, only I choose who is worthy of my title and my gifts. The mere thought of the existence of another with my gifts stirs my anger, but you are of my blood and my soul resonates with yours so easily. If the ceremony had been done at your birth like the old laws dictated, then I would have been reborn into your world, but this is far more entertaining. As king, I grant you my blessing, I grant you your right to become king, but know this, child, I will be watching. Without warning, Gilgamesh thrust his arm into Naruto's chest and pierced his heart. Naruto gurgled as blood filled his throat and dribbled out his mouth. This was it. This was how he died. Gilgamesh snorted condescendingly at Naruto's thought. You're not dying, my heir. You are being reborn. Do you feel my power coursing through your veins, awakening your dormant magic circuits? You may have a new feature or two physically, but what I'm doing is internally cementing you as my heir and the new king. Your first lesson from me before I fade to memory: a king cannot die. With that statement, Gilgamesh was absorbed into Naruto's body. The throne room rumbled and started to crumble. The roof began to crack and it too crumbled. Naruto lay on his back in agony. He couldn't move. All he could do was stare at the roof as it could no longer stay in one piece. A large chunk of stone finally broke free and descended rapidly towards his unmoving form. I guess this is it, he thought sadly, but as he thought those words, the last statement of his ancestor rang through his mind, and he found himself speaking the words out loud before darkness took over. A king cannot die. The moment the seals dimmed, Tsunade was already halfway across the room to Naruto's side, as was the Sandaime. Jiraiya, who was already close by, rushed forward and caught Naruto before he hit the ground and instantly checked for a pulse. You didn't get to be a seal master of his level without knowledge of even the most vile of seals, and the Uzumaki clan's ultimate evil was the creation of the seal that they'd forced on Naruto. At best, Naruto would have changed in personality and become almost completely different from the child that had become a son to him, but at worst he would have died. Either of them made his blood turn to ice. What had he done in complying with Kushina's plan? Mikoto Uchiha was confused at first. She had been summoned by Minato to the council to act as a witness to what was to happen to her son, but her husband Fugaku had threatened her with the life of her son Sasuke should she appear. Luckily for Mikoto, her eldest son Itachi had arrived home early from his ANBU mission and gladly accepted the task of watching the energetic younger brother. Mikoto had rushed as fast as she could to get to the council chambers, but once she'd arrived, however, the first and only thing she saw was Naruto covered in dimming blood seals before he fell. She screamed his name in fear as dread welled up inside her heart and ran forward, not even listening as her husband demanded she stay back. She fell to her knees in front of her unresponsive child and cradled his head in her lap while wailing loudly as she could no longer feel the thumping of his heart in his chest. Jiraiya confirmed that there was no pulse before he stood at full height and turned a truly murderous gaze towards Naruto's parents. He growled menacingly all the while, as if daring them to try and step forward, while Tsunade was using any and all medical jutsu she knew to try and revive Naruto. As time stretched on, she too started to cry and softly pawed at her son's unresponsive form. Unfortunately for everyone, that was when Danzo Shimura, the Sandaime's rival for the position as the third Hokage, made his move. It wasn't that hard to figure out that Danzo wanted Naruto, and even his corpse was enough for him. The genetic material would have been invaluable to the vile man. He'd been carefully in planning his coup for some time, and while everyone was in disarray, he struck. The Sandaime was instantly in place, Enma in hand, and he released the full might of his Ki to deter any and all Root ANBU from engaging them in combat. Danzo was crafty enough to weave through the attacks and managed to get close enough to Naruto to grasp his neck. He pulled a kunai and poised it threateningly, demanding that they back off. The makeshift family grit their teeth and reluctantly stepped back, and Danzo smirked victoriously. It was then that the supposedly dead boy spoke in a voice that was most certainly not Naruto's voice. A king cannot die. A sudden and mesmerizing golden light erupted from Naruto's body. It caught Danzo completely off guard, and as a result Danzo lost an arm, his experimental arm that had been infused with Hashirama's DNA. He'd been counting on the Uchiha to revolt so he could obtain Sharingan as well, but now it looked moot. As the golden light faded, the onlookers, the ninja council as the civilians had collapsed, bore witness to Naruto standing there, completely at ease despite the tension in the room. At first, relief washed over the room's occupants, but their opinions changed however once Naruto opened his eyes. Blood-red eyes like before greeted them, and an amused smile that looked foreign to his features made its way onto the boy's face. "Oh, I'm afraid my heir can't defend himself right now," Naruto spoke in a regal but patronizing tone. "So I guess that my presence shall have to suffice. Be honored, mongrel, for the time of your death is nigh. Death by the hands of a king is above your place, but I shall gladly grant you that honor." Instantly, which threw all of Naruto's teachers off, as it usually took Naruto longer, several golden portals appeared out of thin air, and in them, weapons of foreign design and deadly appearance floated menacingly. They suddenly launched at instantaneous speeds and struck every Root ANBU in sight. All those watching could only stand in awe and fear, as they bore witness as a sea of blood washed over the room like an unstoppable wave. They all shivered as they could actually hear the silent screams from the men, women, and even the children that served as Root ninja. A truly bloodthirsty and savage grin made its way onto Naruto's face as he began to stalk towards an unresponsive Danzo, who'd been sent flying backwards in the backlash. Naruto casually held his hand out, and a sword materialized from another golden portal. He raised the sword to strike and bore his teeth in his unnerving grin as he lunged with the blade, only to be stopped by Hiruzen with his adamantine staff. Naruto turned an amused expression towards the Sandaime, and idly commented, Era, I guess my time's up as my heir awakens. Fare thee well for now, peasants." The red glow in Naruto's eyes faded, but they still remained crimson in color. Likewise, his hair now had a streak of liquid gold hair in his fringe to accompany his blood-red streak. His height was the same, but his complexion had gained a healthier hue to his previously pale white skin, as it was now an enticing creamy color. Naruto blinked before refocusing his gaze on the Sandaime. He appeared confused for a moment before a happy shine appeared in his new red eyes. Aji-san? Hiruzen let out a relieved sigh and smiled warmly at his surrogate grandchild. Are you okay now, Naruto? Naruto nodded softly before shifting his red-eyed gaze across the room. He spotted the fading weapons and he tensed briefly before turning back to Hiruzen. Did I do this or was it the king? The Sandaime coughed awkwardly, but his gaze demanded an explanation as he held up 2 fingers, indicating the second option. Naruto sighed and was about to speak again when he was suddenly engulfed by Tsunade's tight mother bear hug. Mikoto followed shortly after and held onto him desperately as she peppered him with soft kisses to reassure herself more than Naruto. When Jiraiya took a relieved step forward, Naruto flinched away from him, while Tsunade and Mikoto shielded him instinctively due to their maternal instincts being in overdrive. Jiraiya visibly flinched but nodded softly when Naruto smiled sadly back. It was Naruto's way of saying not yet, and Jiraiya understood why. As Jiraiya knew that the seal was there and what it was for, yet he hadn't warned Naruto, nor was Naruto offered a choice in the matter. Then Naruto's gaze fell on his parents, and he frowned at them. Had you informed me of this, I may have forgiven this, he spoke clearly, as to get the message across. I shall stand by my word and visit you with an escort, but after that, you are merely the Hokage's family to me. I shall follow your orders when the time comes, but you will remember that I am now a king, and should I wish it I could leave. Minato nodded grimly. He'd known that this was what would have happened before they even arrived. True, he didn't know that it had hurt Naruto like that, and even now he could see the minor trembling in his son's form, but he still had knowledge of the seal. Kushina held her arm in a timid manner as Naruto's intimidating gaze swept over her and her healing wound from the ceremony. You have completed your responsibility as a retainer of the Uzumaki clan. I will, however, hold off your reward or punishment until I deem fit. Kushina Namikaze. Thank you, she whispered timidly, ashamed to look at her king's shaking form. Naruto suddenly hunched over and coughed violently. Blood splashed onto Mikoto's stomach as she'd still been holding him, and she let out a startled yelp. Mikoto-ka-san, Aji-san, I don't feel well. Naruto coughed as he swayed dangerously for a moment before darkness took him once more, Mikoto having to clutch his form in a quick embrace to stop him from hitting the floor. Naruto groaned softly as his eyes fluttered open. Despite his waking, he'd already realized that he was in the hospital, as the scent of medicines and chemicals were unmistakable to his trained sense of smell, but it was the added scent of rose and lavender that made him crack an exhausted smile. He'd recognized that scent from anywhere, for it belonged to his biological mother, Mikoto Uchiha. Upon the discovery of his Sharingan, the truth surrounding his birth was revealed by Tsunade, the Sandaime, and Jiraiya, but it was his reaction that surprised them all. Naruto had simply requested the presence of the woman who donated her blood and chakra. Mikoto had obliged his request and visited the black-haired youth. Naruto simply asked Mikoto if whether or not she'd made her sacrifice willingly, and upon her answering affirmatively, that she had done so willingly and was not forced, that Naruto turned and hugged Mikoto, whispering his thanks. That had been their first meeting, and since then, they'd only grown to have a relationship that was that of a true mother and son. Her Uchiha DNA made her his biological mother already, but their bond was stronger than most realized. Mikoto later discovered that her second child, Sasuke Uchiha, wasn't even hers to begin with. For her husband Fugaku Uchiha had had an affair with another woman, and she had gotten pregnant around the same time that she had also gotten pregnant. Tsunade, who still owed the Uchiha matriarch a favor for saving Naruto's life as a baby, kept her promise and delivered Mikoto's true second child. Unfortunately, there was a horrible complication during the birth, and her true son had perished. Meanwhile, the woman that her husband had had an affair with had also given birth to a son, but she had died during the birth. The result was an Uchiha infant that had no living relatives, being left alone. So Fugaku, who thought that Mikoto hadn't been informed of her true son's death, or who had really performed the birth, used his Sharingan to confuse one of the doctors into switching the birth records, thus giving Mikoto a child, whilst he managed to convince himself that he'd covered his tracks, or so he thought. Mikoto had at first been resentful of her husband's mistake, but she could never blame the newest addition to their family, so Sasuke Uchiha became her second son. So when Mikoto and Naruto bonded, there was an indescribable closeness between them, and when Naruto hugged her and called her Ka-chan for the first time, she was overjoyed. Naruto was truly a son she was proud of as her eldest son Itachi. While he was a kind-hearted boy, she could tell that he had been troubled of late. Sasuke, however, had started to develop the infamous Uchiha ego, and it grated on her nerves to no end. Every time she disciplined him for his attitude, Fugaku would reward him, and every time he was out of line with his comments to those inferior to an Uchiha male, Fugaku would applaud him. Mikoto really wanted to point out that the Uchiha clan wasn't a patriarchal clan in nature, that she, as an Uchiha of higher station than Fugaku, was the only reason that Fugaku was even in power to begin with, but to Fugaku, and now Sasuke as well, she was inferior to them as they were men and she was a woman. Naruto slowly shifted his weight to attempt to sit up, and it notified Mikoto that he was awake. Mikoto wasted no time in hugging the boy fiercely. "Naruto-chan, you're awake!" Mikoto cried in joy. "Oh, I was so worried about you." Naruto felt horrible. His mother was crying, and even though it was unintentional, it was his fault that she was in her current state. She looked terrible. Tear marks and puffy red eyes were easily visible to Naruto, and her clothes were ruffled, as if they'd been worn for the last few weeks. Naruto coughed. His throat was dry and needed to drink something if he wanted to speak properly. Mikoto took the hint and filled a cup with a jug of water as both were next to his bed. He smiled gratefully but still sniffed the water before drinking, something that Mikoto noticed and approved of. "You never knew if you were trapped, or if a poison had been dropped into your water while you slept. Not that that could have happened, as Mikoto hadn't slept since Naruto's admittance. How long have I been here, Ka-chan?" Naruto managed to croak out. Mikoto teared up as he called her mother. It was still a wonderful thing to her ears, as when Naruto said it, it was filled with so much genuine love. Itachi's often sounded forced, and Sasuke refused to call her such a term. "It's been 2 weeks, Naruto-chan," Mikoto replied with a tender tone of voice. "We didn't know what happened to you and I was so worried." Naruto gently placed his hands on Mikoto's and squeezed. "I'm sorry, Ka-chan. I don't know how to properly explain what happened yet." Mikoto softly shushed Naruto and sat on the edge of his hospital bed. She wrapped her arms around him and just sighed in happiness, the happiness of a mother. Naruto sighed in contentment. His mother's hugs were relaxing and warm, while his other mother Tsunade, her hugs were firm and possessive. Both were simply wonderful. "I need to try to explain everything to the others, Ka-chan," Naruto murmured quietly. "I know, sweetie, I know," she responded. They held the hug for a little while longer before she activated the bedside seal to alert Naruto's doctor, who just happened to be Tsunade, that he was awake. Quicker than anyone could react, Tsunade burst into the room, a mixture of fury and desperation in her eyes that darted to every corner of the room. When her eyes landed on Naruto, she let out a hiccuped sob before she all but ran to his side and ran diagnostic jutsu on him. When they came back with no negative signs, she fell to her knees and embraced Naruto tightly, as if she was scared that he'd disappear. Tsunade didn't say anything, she just held him and shed silent tears. Naruto happily led her. After several minutes of just enjoying the warmth of each other's presence, Tsunade finally pulled away and turned her head towards the door. "It's all clear, Sensei Perv." The door slammed open and in walked a confident-looking Hiruzen, followed by a nervous-looking Jiraiya. They both looked fine, but if you paid enough attention you could see the signs of wear and tear on their person, such as the extra lines prominent on the Sandame's forehead and lips that indicated a severe frown, and the slightly red tint to Jiraiya's eyes. It was clear to see that Jiraiya still felt responsible for the situation, as he had prior knowledge to the seal being there and hadn't acted in the best interests of one he cared about. Tsunade and Mikoto's cold glares were enough for Naruto to realize that they were still upset at the lack of information that had caused their child to suffer. "Hi, Aji-san." Jiraiya-sensei, Naruto finally spoke in a tone that reminded those present that he was still a child. "Sorry for worrying you and Jiraiya-sensei? I don't blame you. While I was out, I was speaking to the one that defended me against that old man and his rude Anbu. He explained that you couldn't control the actions of my parents." "Yes, Danzo Shimura had previously made his intentions towards you and your sister quite clear," Hiruzen commented dryly. "You see, Minato reinstated Root as an elite form of Black Ops targeted to Anbu, but Danzo went back to his old tricks in trying to overthrow the Hokage and take the position himself. How we didn't figure out his endgame is beyond me." It was Naruto's turn to frown as he replied. "You weren't expected to understand the man, Aji-san, but what about the outcome? The man carries traces of the Senju's DNA and not naturally. At least, that's what Gilgamesh told me." Tsunade's head snapped up and glared daggers as the Sandame. "You failed to mention that particular detail, Sensei." The Sandame started to sweat at the tone of Tsunade's voice. It was a tone that promised pain and retribution. Oddly enough, only 2 people were capable of using such a tone: Tsunade and her surrogate son Naruto. Speaking of Naruto, he was also directing a Tsunade-like glare at him for not telling his mother in all but blood about such an important detail. "I was actually going to inform you later tonight at tea," he finally sighed out, trying to placate the mother-son duo. "And Danzo's fate was decided just last night under a temporary full tribunal council with the Fire Daimyo himself, acting as both his vote and the royal vote of the Uzumaki." Naruto perked up at that. "He voted on my behalf? I don't know how to feel about that." "I wouldn't worry about that brat," Jiraiya spoke, interrupting the Sandame. "It was a unanimous decision that you as the king of the Uzumaki and the person who Danzo attacked would decide his fate. Is that right?" Naruto questioned out loud. He thought in silence for almost 5 minutes before declaring in a commanding tone. "Then before you, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandame Hokage and Tsunade Senju, princess of the Senju clan, as my witnesses, not to mention the 4 Anbu in hiding, I, Uzumaki Naruto, king of the Uzumaki clan, declare that Danzo Shimura is to be interrogated without reprieve until all of his secrets are revealed. After which he is to be publicly executed for attacking a member of the royal family of Yuzu, an allied nation of Konoha." Silence filled the room, and apart from the hollow chuckling that echoed through Naruto's mind from Gilgamesh, nothing was spoken for almost 10 minutes before Naruto grew tired of it and barked to the 4 hidden Anbu. I have provided my verdict. Inform the Hokage and the Lord Daimyo of my decision and tell them that I want his best interrogators on the job. Without any hesitation the ANBU, which happened to be strange-looking root ANBU bearing black masks, appeared. Then to Naruto's surprise they bowed in respect before disappearing swiftly to do their appointed task. At Naruto's questioning glance to his makeshift family, they snapped out of their thoughts and the Sandaime managed to speak first. We don't actually know what's happened, Naruto-kun, the Sandaime finally spoke. After you cut off Danzo's arm, a strange symbol appeared on the back of your tongue. Naruto raised an eyebrow before grasping his tongue to try and see said symbol. Those present chuckled and he blushed as he then accepted a mirror that had been handed to him by a silently amused Mikoto. He opened his mouth and stuck out his tongue again and blinked in surprise. The symbol was of a serpent circled around a triangular-shaped symbol. The circling serpent had wings and the unique triangular symbol that rested in the open center of the serpent had an Uzumaki swirl in it. It was black in color, and would otherwise be hidden unless his tongue was completely out of his mouth. And what is it? Naruto finally asked. I assume it has something to do with the strange obedience of those oddly dressed ANBU to me? Jiraiya shrugged unhelpfully. I don't know, I've seen something similar in the journals of the second Hokage, but that's all I know. It's a control seal, Naruto-kun, the Sandaime replied as he ignored the indignant look from Jiraiya at not telling him. It was designed by the second Hokage to control the minds of the root soldiers that he created. Danzo must have discovered the key to using it, but beyond that I have no clue. I have theorized that since you most likely destroyed Danzo's seal, it transferred to you as the victor. The seal was always unnerving to me, almost sentient in nature. Naidame-sama based the seal off of an old Uzumaki seal of unknown origin. Naruto hummed in thought. You mean I now control a force of elite ANBU that should have allegiance to the Hokage? In essence, yes, the Sandaime replied tiredly. Everything was a mess in Konoha since news had gotten out that the demon brat was in fact a king that held far more power than even their daimyo. The villagers had all but begged Naruto's makeshift family for forgiveness and showered Naruto's room with gifts in an attempt to bribe the young king, in hope that he'd show mercy to them, gifts that Mikoto had sealed away so Naruto wouldn't be upset by their actions. Changing the subject, the Sandaime asked. So how was your training, Naruto-kun? Instantly taking hold of the subject change to replace the uncomfortable silence, Naruto perked up and replied. It was great, Aji-san. My power has gotten stronger. And why are you looking at me like that, Aji-san? Tsunade-ka-chan. Naruto-kun, whatever that seal did to you, it destroyed what was left of your chakra coils. Tsunade whispered gently. Tests have confirmed that your Sharingan still works, but it now completely uses your unknown energy to operate. You may have to start training from scratch, depending on what changes have happened to your body. Despite the discomfort in revealing the bad news, Naruto just exhaled loudly before turning a smile to them. I know all about that already. What? Tsunade screamed loudly. How do you know? King Gilgamesh informed me of the changes after I collapsed in the council chambers. He replied easily. He answered a lot of questions. Actually, the unknown energy is actually called mana, and I can access an endless supply. However, the amount I can use is limited by my ability to refine it in my body with things called magic circuits. Before the ceremony I could create my weapons slowly due to my circuits being small and mostly inactive. Think of it like the opposite of how small chakra reserves affect chakra control. Now that I've become king, my circuits went into overload and can now hold unlimited quantities of mana as my inactive magic circuits were forced to activate to accommodate the immensely pure mana. Naruto took a deep breath before continuing. Due to this, my speed in creating weapons will be off. My Gate of Babylon technique will be easier to use as I now don't have to exert more energy into the technique because that energy is already there. It was originally like trying to use the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone technique, with tiny reserves as a before, and then trying to do the same technique with Uzumaki chakra reserves as the other end of the scale. Before the ritual I had slow creation time, but exceptional control as I could create weapons effortlessly. That won't change, but the Gate of Babylon technique took longer to power due to lack of mana. That's why I originally turned to space/time fuinjutsu as an answer, but when I encountered Gilgamesh in my mind during the ceremony/ritual, I was helpless as I couldn't use any of my powers in his presence. In the end I could only create the one weapon to block his endless supply. Naruto grit his teeth in frustration. After the ritual and bonding I should be able to use the technique quicker, but in the end it'll take a lot of practice to use it. I'll just have to rely on the fuinjutsu version until I can the original Gate of Babylon with ease. Naruto-kun, I just mentioned that there's no more chakra, you can't use jutsu anymore, Tsunade reminded. I know, Ka-chan, but Gilgamesh told me that I was never performing jutsu in the first place. Naruto replied quickly. Please elaborate, Hiruzen prompted, eager for an explanation. The Ine seal that we designed was based on an older Uzumaki seal, remember? Naruto answered, and at the Sandaime's nod, he continued. Well, it turns out that all Uzumaki seals were originally powered by mana, so fuinjutsu still works for me. In regards to using jutsu, I've been using skills that were also originally mana-fueled. Take the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu for example. It was designed by the mana users of the past as a temporary recreation of one's will, but with time the technique was adapted to chakra use by the Naidame Hokage. In doing so, the manner in which the technique was created was also adapted. That means that the technique is completely different from the original, but can still be mana-powered due to the origins of the technique. I see in the other techniques? Mikoto inquired. The Katon Jutsu that I educated you in? Recreations adapted by mana, Naruto replied with a smile. The use of hand signs instead of incantation allows me to project the jutsu, and use it just like how I use projection to create my weapons. The room's occupants were all stunned by the revelations that had been revealed to them. Naruto's strength was going to be amazing, but the shortfalls fell on his body's physical endurance. That he was an Uzumaki was only slightly helpful if the details were accurate. In the end, Naruto would have to retrain his physical skills from scratch, but where could he do that safely? It seemed that the last question was voiced by one of them because their train of thought was interrupted by another figure that entered the room. It was the fire daimyo, along with his bodyguard Asuma Saratobi. My palace would be the perfect place for you to retrain your skills, King Uzumaki, the fire daimyo proposed. You could even train with my ninja guardians to further your skills. Heads throughout the room snapped to the fire daimyo in shock. That kind of an offer wasn't usually given, as the skills of a ninja guardian were kept confidential in that you had to become a guardian to learn them. At least, only if you desire to further your skills, he amended quickly. You'd have to register as a guardian, but you won't be required to serve me in an official capacity. Tsunade, Jiraiya and Hiruzen were about to talk Naruto out of it, but he beat them to it. I see. And how long am I to be trained, and in what fields will I be trained in? He asked the daimyo seriously, far more so than those that knew him had ever heard before from the youth. All fields that they are able to train you in. Then there's the political training, as you've taken the mantle of king. The fire daimyo responded promptly. Of course, you need to appoint a steward or proxy to go with you until your graduation of skills. And should I wish to return to Konoha after the training? Naruto inquired, glancing to the sandaime. He continued with a small smile to the man. I have a promise to keep to my grandfather, after all. Then you are free to leave, the fire daimyo replied with a shrug. I'm not forcing you, my king, just offering. Allow me to think on this, please, Lord Daimyo, Naruto answered respectfully, an action that both of his mothers approved of. I will inform you of my decision in 2 days at the latest. The fire daimyo simply nodded with a smile and left, with a reluctant Asuma following after a serious glance to his father. Hiruzen got the message. It might be better to allow Naruto to have this opportunity. The family continued to talk for hours after that before Tsunade demanded that he rest. The family was about to leave when Naruto finally swallowed and spoke up. Wait, Naruto spoke quickly. Once he was sure they were paying attention, he continued. I want to go, not just for the training, but I need to get out of Konoha for a while. You see, I've been thinking about this for a long time, ever since the IWA missing Nin incident. The others, besides Jiraiya, raised a brow. The IWA missing Nin incident? Jiraiya started to sweat nervously, something Tsunade was quick to spot, and she growled at the Toad Sage. What incident, Jiraiya? And nothing, Tsunadeheim, nothing at all, Jiraiya hastily explained, too hastily. After a death glare that could rival the Shinigami, Jiraiya sighed and explained the incident from his point of view. I was gathering information at one of my drop zones when I felt a massive spike in energy from the brat. I quickly made my way over and saw a B-ranked missing Nin from IWA by the name of Baki Yumamono getting his torso completely vaporized by one of Naruto's attacks. The shock on his dying face was easy to notice. A round of gasps went through the room, the prominent being from Mikoto and Tsunade, as they both knew of the sadistic man in question, as they'd fought with his platoon during the war. The man was sick, and his horrible tendency of raping young ninja and kunoichi was infamously known. When the sandaime of IWA tried to discipline him after the war, he fled and continued on his merry way. The two women turned their furious gaze to Naruto. The silent demand for an explanation was visible, along with their anger at him taking the man on in the first place. I was practicing my meditation skills when he found me, he explained. He took a gulp of water before continuing. He instantly recognized my description as a student of Jiraiya of the Sannin, and he sought to kill me in revenge against the Yondaime Hokage for being a fellow pupil of the Toad Sage. He was so fast I couldn't keep up, and so I activated my Sharingan to help follow his movements. He was effortlessly playing with me, testing me. He said something about adding me to his collection of victims. I was scared, really scared, and I didn't know what to do, so I created a shadow clone and fled. He followed and could have killed me, but he underestimated me, and it was only because of that I beat him. He chased after my shadow clone, laughing all the while like it was simply a game to him, but he didn't count on my ability to create weapons. Flashback start. Naruto hissed as a kunai sliced at his leg, the action causing him to miss the branch and fall to the ground. He created another clone to charge in as a suicide attack, and he used the distraction to materialize a bow and arrow, but in his fear Naruto overcharged the arrow. Naruto jumped as Baki appeared in his comfort zone and accidentally let it loose in its overcharged form. It struck the surprised man, and he watched with a sick feeling as the man's torso was completely destroyed, vaporized by the overcharged mana attack. All that remained of Baki Yumamono was his twitching legs and a head frozen in sheer terror. Jiraiya had appeared at that point, and he too looked a little shocked at Naruto's method to kill the missing Nin. It took Jiraiya days to help Naruto through the vomiting and guilt and nightmares. Flashback end. Tsunade, Mikoto, and the sandaime all glanced at Naruto in sadness as tears began to fall down his cheeks. They could have gone their entire lives with the hope that Naruto would never have to endure the pain that killing brought, but they were shinobi/kunoichi and it was a part of their job description. Shinera-chan, Mikoto consoled her child. It's okay, you did the right thing. You would have died if you didn't kill him first. Naruto nodded miserably. He knew the stakes when the battle started and he also understood the consequences of killing, but that didn't stop the disgust that coursed through his veins at the thought of the look of shock and fear as Naruto blew the man's torso apart. Era little king, he heard Gilgamesh state from his mind. The man was a fool to stand against a king. He reaped the reward of his foolishness and perished like the mongrel that he was. Raise your head and dry your tears, my heir. Your actions were just. Naruto didn't know why such arrogant words cheered him up, but they did, and he listened to Gilgamesh. He raised his head and gulped in a deep breath. I don't like killing, but I understand the necessity of it. A shinobi doesn't hesitate. The Sandaime looked pleased by the statement and agreed with him. It is only if you find yourself enjoying the act of killing, when you know that you've become a monster. Naruto-kun. Mikoto and Tsunade looked briefly at each other before Tsunade spoke. If you want to accept the daimyo's offer, then you must know that I can't go with you, Naruto-kun. I can visit when I can, but I can't stay. I could go with you, Naru-chan, but my husband won't allow me to stay. Mikoto sighed tiredly before she perked up with a sly grin on her face. Unless you appoint me your proxy, then I could stay with you. Fugaku wouldn't dare refuse the order of both the king of the Uzumaki and the fire daimyo. You know I can visit you, brat, Jiraiya pitched in. But my spy network would demand my attention too often to stay. Hiruzen hummed in thought and pierced Naruto with a stern look. I will agree, but only on one condition. Aji-san, Naruto murmured in fondness. What condition? You fulfill your promise to me and return to become a Konoha shinobi. The Sandaime replied with a smile. Naruto agreed instantly, and thanked them profusely over and over again. Eventually they all grew tired and Tsunade ordered him to sleep. Naruto was more than happy to follow the order, and soon they all left, aside from Mikoto, who simply snuggled into her chair. She simply refused to return home, and Naruto was starting to suspect something was going on. Minato frowned at Naruto's decided punishment for Danzo. Sure, it was completely justified, but Minato couldn't help think that Naruto was going overboard. At first he and his ANBU were on edge when the Black Mask Division of Root, the absolute cream of the crop, and rumored to be equal to the Sannin in strength, appeared and notified him of their Lord Naruto's decision in regards to the traitorous Danzo. The Black Mask Division were a complete mystery, as their masks differed from skulls, to animals to demonic and so on and so forth, but the only thing the division had in common was that their masks were black, and upon the death of a member, their mask simply melted back into the darkness, as if it had never existed in the first place. Then there was the fact that no one had ever been inducted since the apparent forming of the group, so there could be anyone underneath their masks. Back to the matter at hand, Danzo's punishment seemed too much for Minato. That was until the TNI division uncovered the many plots and secrets of Danzo, including the control seal placed on their bodies. The thought that Naruto had gone overboard quickly vanished as more and more traitorous plots and dealings were uncovered, such as his dealings with Orochimaru, and discovering the early stages of his invasion with Sand and the newly rumored Sound Village. An order from Naruto later, and every Root ANBU/Ninja Kunoichi were seal-free and ordered to merge their forces to ordinary ANBU until the new branch could be reviewed. In the end, it was actually Naruto who offered the solution. It was something that they hadn't even thought of until he did so, but 2 days after the control seals were removed, one Hiruzen Sarutobi became the new director and head to the newly renovated Root forces. There was something that unnerved the Konoha Shinobi Council though. The Black Mask Division still owed complete allegiance to Naruto Uzumaki and would not acquiesce the Yandaime's or Sandaime's orders. They were at their wits' end until Hiruzen discovered their true identity. Well, he said identity, but it was more like their origin. They were actually summoned from an ancient sentient summoning contract that was tied to the Uzumaki clan. It had been acquired by Danzo through illegal means and subjugated to his control. But when Naruto's mana weapon vaporized Danzo's arm, it set the summoning scroll back to automatic, in that their allegiance turned back to their king. Naruto had asked Gilgamesh for answers, but all he received was a lengthy speech about them serving their king, though he did mention that they were allied to the Jackal clan, so that was why they followed his orders. Apparently the seal on his tongue was proof of his control over them. Their true name was lost to history, and no matter how many times he asked, all Naruto was given was, "We are assassin," or how the Black Mask Division was an adequate name. The leader of the Black Mask Division simply went by codename Skull, and he accepted his orders from Naruto, and only Naruto, and relayed those orders to the other division members. And 2. Minato sighed tiredly, this whole mess due to a seal that Kushina had no real knowledge on, except on how to perform as a retainer of the Uzumaki clan. Her responsibility was to awaken their king, and then the king would then decide on the fate of the clan's future. They were unsure if the seal worked, as Naruto was essentially the same as he was before the seal, but his cold attitude to the more serious issues that shouldn't be decided by a child was unnerving to the blonde Hokage. Minato shifted his gaze to the clock on the wall and sighed. Naruto still hasn't visited, and Kushina is a mess. Yumi doesn't understand what's going on, and her temper has been flaring of late. The seal is holding, but she'll need training soon to help her learn self-control. I never thought I'd ever think this, but I wish Yumi was more like Naruto, and in control of her emotions. Lord Hokage, the distorted, raspy voice of Skull suddenly interrupted. Minato jumped and turned his attention to the summon. Yes, Skull, what has brought you here? My Lord Uzumaki has sent me to inform you that he shall meet you at your place of residency for tea later this afternoon. He shall be accompanied by Mikoto Uchiha and Tsunade Senju. That is all. Message delivered. Good afternoon, Lord Hokage, intoned the summon in a creepy tone of voice as he stood in front of him. Skull tilted his head in a nod before he vanished in a puff of black smoke. Tea time, huh? Minato mused silently, just a little more cheerfully than earlier. A glance at the clock told him that it was already almost tea time. An hour. Finally we can explain. Mabuki Haruno walked cheerfully up the stone pathway of her front yard. As she arrived at the front door, it opened to reveal the equally happy form of her only daughter Sakura Haruno. Sakura helped her mother with the shopping bags that Mabuki had been carrying before turning to Mabuki, her long bright pink hair swaying by the action. So Mum, when were you going to tell me that the king has returned? Sakura asked, with a tone of annoyance and a sickly sweet smile on her face. My duty is to report to him and introduce myself at the earliest convenience. Sakura-chan, I'm sorry, but I wanted you to experience a real childhood while you had the chance. I educated you in your duties and then you would have continued by teach your children until the king reawakened, Mabuki replied softly, genuinely apologetic in her tone. Besides, wouldn't Ino-chan and Sasuke-kun have thought it strange that you just became someone else, that bastard? The only reason I follow that boy around is due to the other girl's infatuation with him, trying to appear normal and all. Besides, you know that I can't get attached to anyone properly until we know for sure the king was awakened or not, Sakura replied dryly, her tone dripping with disgust over her supposed crush. Yamanaka Ino is probably the only girl that I have attached myself to, but should my king demand her death for an insult, then she'd die simple. I may even feel remorse for the action, due to our bond, but his orders are absolute. Mabuki was torn between sad resignation and pride at her daughter's sense of loyalty to her king. This, however, was what she feared most, as her husband had been exactly the same. When they'd met, he'd been unusually cold-hearted, but once the truth came out, and the king was confirmed as dormant, he turned into the sweetest man she'd ever known, and if his death hadn't come so soon, their family would have been much larger. Very well, Sakura, Mabuki sighed. We'll visit His Highness before I prepare for dinner, so go and get dressed. Sakura smiled happily at her mother, and instantly bolted up the stairs to her room in order to dress properly. Mabuki found herself smiling bitterly at the scene. She just hoped that the king wouldn't punish her precious daughter due to her mother's selfishness, or that he was honorable enough to not take her little girl away from her. She turned to finish putting the groceries away, and by the time she was finished, Sakura had returned. The traditional sleeveless, red shipao dress of the Haruno clan on, and her hair properly tied back. Mabuki allowed a proud smile onto her face and hugged her precious daughter. It was time to meet the king and learn of their fate as members of the Haruno clan. Upon arriving at the correct floor of the hospital, Mabuki and Sakura approached Naruto's door. Mabuki was instantly on alert as a shiver of fear went down her spine, for she was suddenly face to face with one of the infamous Black Mask Division members. The lifeless gaze of the skull-like mask bored into her own, and she shivered again. What is a member of the BMD doing here? Mabuki swallowed heavily. I am Haruno Mabuki, with my daughter Haruno Sakura. We are answering the call of the old laws regarding the status of the Haruno clan's oath of service. The lifeless gaze switched to Sakura and she winced. The assassin/guard before her could cut them down effortlessly, and there was nothing she could do if said assassin decided to do so. The standoff continued for another minute or two before the creepy and grated voice of the BMD member spoke. He has granted you permission to enter, please. He trailed off as he gestured to the door at the far end of the hall. Mabuki nodded and quickened her pace, with Sakura in tow. As they walked up the hallway, Mabuki realized just how many presences she could now sense that hadn't been there a split second before. So that's the BMD? While Mabuki hesitated in disturbing the king, Sakura had no such reservations in knocking on the door and entered after being granted permission to enter. Once inside, she gasped at the noble air that surrounded the boy sitting in the bed. You are of the Haruno clan? The boy spoke clearly, a wonderful voice to her young ears. Why yes, I am Sakura Haruno, my king. Sakura bowed as she replied. Her nerves were replaced with confusion when he chuckled softly. Raise your head, Sakura-san, her king responded. I am Uzumaki Naruto and I find formalities tediously dull, so you may call me Naruto if you wish. Sakura was more than happy to obey. She believed in rules but hated to speak unnecessarily. Her father had been the same, and it was why the Haruno family had their infamous temper. Their split personality was simply a manifestation of their fake and true personalities due to their childhood training. Her inner Sakura was part of her suppressed personality that she'd isolated so that she could interact with children her age as cover. Yes, Naruto-sama, Sakura instantly responded as her head rose to meet his gaze once more. Oh, you have pretty eyes, Sakura-san, Naruto commented idly. And you're smart too, I can tell, it's in your eyes. Inner Sakura swooned at the comment, and a blush managed to work itself onto her cheeks. Thank you, Naruto-sama. Naruto smiled for a moment before his face turned serious. Listen, if I was to release your family from its debt to the Uzumaki clan, would you accept? Sakura and Mabuki were stunned just like that. Their debt could be erased. their honor restored and freedom granted. I am afraid that I don't understand Naruto-sama, Sakura stuttered. She hadn't been trained for this possibility. I don't need nor want mindless servants, Sakura-san, Naruto responded regally. I want friends, not servants, so should I release your family from its owed debt, would you simply accept my friendship? Sakura stuttered to herself. Her breathing sped up. Wasn't it enough that her new king was handsome and kind? But now he was genuinely conversing with her and offering her freedom. He was simply wonderful. And Naruto-sama, I am afraid that you simply can't dismiss the owed debts without proper recompense, Mabuki offered quietly as she inwardly smirked at the blushing form of her daughter. Looks like someone has a crush. I see him, ma, I have it, Naruto exclaimed cheerfully. So you're saying that I'm required to give you an order, just one, and then you're free? At Mabuki's nod he grinned. Then I, Uzumaki Naruto, king of the Uzumaki clan, do hereby order you, Sakura Haruno, to tell me your dreams and aspirations. Silence. There was silence for several minutes before Sakura burst out in a glowing crimson blush and Mabuki giggled heartily. I wish to be a strong kunoichi, Naruto-sama, Sakura finally managed to reply. At first it was to serve you, but I want to be strong like Tsunade-sama. I wish to become a legendary kunoichi. Naruto smiled at Sakura and the tension left the room. They conversed for nearly an hour before he realized the time. I need to meet the Hokage for tea, so I shall give one last order to you before I set your clan free. Mabuki and Sakura both gasped softly. He was telling the truth before? I order you, Sakura Haruno, to follow your dream and become a legendary kunoichi, Naruto ordered firmly. With that, I, Naruto Uzumaki, king of the Uzumaki clan, declared the Haruno clan free from service. A pulse of power blew from the room and Mabuki and Sakura suddenly felt a great weight disappear from their shoulders. On a side note, Sakura-san, I'll put in a good word with Tsunade-ka-chan if you want to learn from her, Naruto grinned genuinely. Sakura blushed crimson once more and fainted in joy. Naruto freaked out and caught her before she hit the ground. What did I say or do? Sakura-san? Sakura-san, please answer me. Mabuki could no longer hold in her emotions and burst out laughing. Don't worry, Naruto-sama, she'll be fine, I promise. She took the smiling but otherwise unresponsive form of her daughter in her arms and offered a heart-filled thank you before she left. Naruto watched the duo go and then glanced at the clock. I'm late, Naruto yelled out as he jumped out of the room in a dash. Good thing his clothes survived the ordeal and he'd dressed before Sakura and her mother visited. Naruto managed to make it to the Namake's family estate just in time as Mikoto and Tsunade were already there, and Tsunade didn't look happy. Whether that was due to the company waiting with the duo at the front gate or Naruto's tardiness, he didn't know, but he'd wager it was a combination of the two reasons. The Namake's family all perked up when he appeared, Kushina and Yumi more so than Minato, but that was a given considering the tension over the last few weeks, along with the discovery that Konoha's most elite Black Ops unit wasn't Konoha's any longer. Naruto-sama, Kushina greeted politely. Oni-chan, Yumi chirped happily. Greetings and welcome to our home, Minato announced formally. He was under no illusions that Naruto hadn't called the estate home for a while, and the appearance of his bare room was a testament to that revelation. Thank you for your invitation, Hokage-sama, Naruto replied, earning a nod from Tsunade at his use of the proper wording. I also ask you grant my guests, Tsunade Senju, princess of the Senju clan, and Mikoto Uchiha, matriarch of the Uchiha clan, access to your home as witnesses to any and all possible official proceedings. Minato and Kushina internally beamed with pride at his mannerisms and proper education and nodded, whilst Yumi just watched on in confusion. They were all escorted through the estate's security seals and all sat in the main family room for tea. Naruto did hit a nerve when he double-checked the chair for blood seals before sitting down, though a glare from both of the women with Naruto told them to stay put. It was a warranted move, after all, especially considering the last time he'd been in their presence. Once tea had been served, they discussed minor issues, such as Naruto's intentions now that he was in such a position, or what he dreamed of becoming. His answer of a guardian of Konoha confused Kushina and Yumi, but Minato understood the only position higher than a Sannin but lower than a Kage in terms of servitude was to become a guardian. They represented a village as their home base but were otherwise free to roam their chosen countries/countries of guardianship. So in Naruto's case, it would be Hai no Kuni and Yuzu no Kuni. Minato said position, not power, though if Naruto were to achieve his goal, then he'd easily match a Sannin or Kage in battle and be strong enough to govern the Uzumaki clan into prosperity. The thought brought a bittersweet smile and a proud feeling to the yondaime. Was his son always so mature? Yumi soon grew bored, and even though it was rude of her, she stood up and left, shouting about meeting up with her friends. Kushina was about to reprimand her for her rudeness to their clan head, but Naruto dismissed it. She's a child, let her be one, was all he said, but the comment was met with a harsh silence, the undertone being, because I was not allowed to be a child, let her be one. Once she'd left though, Minato turned serious. It's time I explained my actions, Naruto. Naruto finished his tea and nodded to him to begin, Tsunade shifting her weight and Mikoto gently taking his hand and squeezing it softly, an action that both Namakes noticed. They weren't upset though, sad perhaps but not upset, they knew how close they were. I should begin with my first mistake, Minato began. He took a breath before continuing. At the time of the sealing, my first mistake was using a seal that we hadn't properly tested. It was designed to split the kyubi into two, the chakra and the soul. A foolish thought, Naruto interrupted. The memories granted to me by King Gilgamesh tell me that to split the consciousness and the chakra of an immortal being is naught but reckless. Gamabunta said the same thing. Minato chuckled humorlessly. Anyway, the seal backfired, and in doing so it took the soul that had been sealed within you and your chakra with it, and pushed both into Yumi. Your abilities are unknown to the shinobi world, and I honestly won't insult you by asking what you can do until you wish to reveal the skills, but I have read the incident report regarding your encounter with Baki Yumamono, and I was there to witness the fall of Danzo and his root operatives. Naruto opened a lazy eye and looked to Minato. Thank you for your respect, though. Now that we're on the topic of the council incident. Almost there, I promise, Naruto, Minato interjected. The seal that is on Yumi is under constant pressure due to having the entirety of the kyubi sealed within, and her spoiled personality is causing the strain to increase. We were under the assumption that if we took our attention away from Yumi for but a second, the seal could snap open and re-release the kyubi. Is that such a bad thing? Naruto interrupted once more. At their confused and horrified looks he clarified. The kyubi and his brethren were originally protectors of the elemental nations. Their power was warped by human conflict, and the person to quell their fury was Hashirama Senju. Though he did not ask them of their history, he treated them as mindless beasts, and then pawned them off in his attempt to bring peace. It of course backfired when they resealed the 9 bijou into people that became known as Jinchuriki. The only bijou to remain focused on their appointed task was the Kyubi no Kitsune, but he later became ensnared by the Mangekyo Sharingan. He was used as a tool in fighting Hashirama and his wife Mito Uzumaki Senju. But did she interact with the Kyubi? No, she too treated him as a mindless beast. True, his hatred of humanity has only grown with each resealing, but he is an intelligent and sentient life form. My memories show my ancestor often spoke with the various bijou to garner wisdom from their experiences, or to simply find an amusing partner to debate pointless topics with to relive boredom. Furthermore, I'm guessing that he looked to Kushina. Also treated him unjustly, and I have no doubt that Yumi believes herself worthy of Kyubi's power as his host when she finds out anyway. Which, judging from your looks, she does know and already thinks that way. No? Why, you're right, Kushina spoke. I never treated Kyubi with anything but contempt, and I should have at least treated him with more kindness, but it was how I was taught by Mito-sama. Naruto hummed and glanced at Minato when he coughed to continue. Anyway, moving on. The seal has already shown signs of degradation, and her training took priority, and since you were close to the remaining Sannin, Mikoto, and the Sandame, I used that as an excuse to neglect you. That's it. Now you know. It's the same story for me, Kushina included at Naruto's expected look. I even neglected the Uzumaki creed in my inaction. Naruto reclosed his lazy eye and hummed in thought. I guess, now that you've explained that, I can inform you that I already know about the ritual and what it entailed, so your explanation in regards to the council incident is unnecessary. He watched them flinch, and Kushina looked even more worse for wear. But that is not what you're waiting for, is it? You wish to know of your fate, correct, Kushina Namikaze? Kushina nodded pitifully and merely responded with a meek yes. Your explanation was sound, Naruto responded. I hold no grudge, so you are not going to be punished. What? Kushina asked as she snapped her gaze to Naruto's. You should know of my intentions though, Naruto continued, unfazed by Kushina's outburst. I have accepted Fire Daimyo, Masahiko Shinji's offer, and I shall be leaving to train with the Ninja Guardians. Minato and Kushina gasped. As such an honor is unheard of. Yes, but I also promised Aji-san to return to Konoha after my training is complete, Naruto replied, again, unfazed by their shock. So I shall serve under you as an open shinobi. Is that satisfactory, Hokage-sama? Yes, of course, Naruto, Minato replied in a daze. But who will act as your proxy or steward? My biological mother, of course, Naruto said, shocking Kushina in the process. Mikoto Uchiha. Kushina flinched at the comment, but it was true. Mikoto was also Naruto's biological mother due to the blood and chakra infusion. I see. In Fugaku's response to your request? Minato queried. What request? I ordered it. Naruto waved the Hokage's question off. I'm not blind to the tension with the Uchiha clan and the village. I would rather have my mother close by than left to the hands of that nutcase. Mikoto couldn't stop the proud smile that formed. It was nice to be appreciated for just being there. They continued to discuss random items before Naruto stood. I thank you for the tea, but I'm required at the main gates. The daimyo's entourage is leaving. They were saddened to hear of his departure so soon, but they nodded nonetheless. Standing at the main gates, Naruto glanced to the carriage that he was to ride in. He impressed Asuma by declining the ride and expressed his desire to walk. He gave his seat in the carriage to Mikoto, and the party left after a few hearty goodbyes and a firm hug from Tsunade. The legend of Konoha's archer was about to begin. If there was one thing that Naruto was disgusted by, it was arrogant chakra users. Since Naruto had fused with Gilgamesh, he'd inadvertently inherited the Uzumaki king's distaste towards those who boasted their skills without having the ability to back up their words. It honestly sickened the black-haired youth. And this man reeked of arrogance with no conceivable power to back that arrogance up with. This lowly worm begins to annoy me, Gilgamesh's voice echoed once more through Naruto's mind. Naruto agreed with the Uzumaki king, and it was as he mentally agreed with his ancestor that he recognized the man. "Keep talking, mongrel," Naruto spoke, projecting his inner Gilgamesh. "Give me a reason to remove you from this world." The man stopped his laughter at Naruto's words and gulped nervously. His name was Minoru Yukike's. The man was 30 years old and bore a plain, common-looking appearance of brown hair and eyes. He was tan, showing the hours that he spent in the sun, but the man was ultimately lazy as the time he spent in the sun was lounging about. Minoru never showed any initiative. He would make the effort to meet the requirements for the Guardian program, but nothing more. He had no aspirations higher than simply being a guardian, and that was not acceptable to the Fire Daimyo, Asuma and Shiraku. Therefore, Minoru had failed to make the Guardian program, and as a result, he felt quite bitter towards the daimyo. Minoru decided that if he couldn't be a guardian, then he'd eliminate their reason to exist and he'd show them what he could do. In the end, he chose to attack the staff entrance to the side of the Imperial Palace and infiltrate the palace that way, but he had possibly the worst timing. Naruto woke from a restless sleep. Since the merging with the Uzumaki king, and subsequently taking in an everlasting supply of mana, his mana circuits had been taking their time in adapting to the vast power. The process wasn't painful, but the nightmares were. Naruto had been reliving Gilgamesh's past life's memories every night since the joining, and when you'd been reborn constantly, you had a lot of memories to sort through. The plus side to the reliving of his memories was the knowledge that came with them. They provided locations and forgotten places that had been lost to the sands of time. Places and locations that were highly spiritual and possessed an exceptionally high concentration of mana. These locations would help him adapt to the true essence of Gilgamesh's power: instantaneous projection. If he wasn't mentally exhausted by the amalgamation of their memories, he was training physically. The training was grueling in nature, and he was still only on the Guardian program's basic training regime. It was mostly extending one's limits by running constantly, with stretching and weights added to make sure the program's candidates didn't lose their flexibility either. Every day the candidates woke early, while the sun was still hidden by the morning's darkened sky, and were subjected to the strenuous training that added to Naruto's political training and his personal training, led Naruto to excel as the top candidate in the program. Naruto's personal training wasn't a secret to the other candidates, but it confused them. The training was essentially learning with the Ninja Guardian's blacksmith, who was simply named the blacksmith by the other guardians. While under his tutelage, Naruto learned about various metals. Their weight, feel, touch, and most importantly their properties were all memorized. This in turn strengthened his knowledge in the art of weapon projection. It was becoming easier to project his weapons and use them in combat. His style that revolved around Kansho and Bakuya was becoming infamous within the Imperial Palace's walls, and word was spreading fast. So fast, in fact, that his reputation was being revered by the court and the people of the Imperial City. The people simply loved the Uzumaki king, and they loved the concept of a hero, and that was what he was to the people, a hero. Often, when Naruto wandered the streets and marketplaces, he kindly greeted those that greeted him, or helped those that needed help. He had foiled many thefts and murders, and the population had taken him in as one of their own. Naruto, by just being himself, had become an icon and a symbol of justice to the Imperial City. That didn't mean that Naruto was perfect though. Naruto's tendency to insult those that deserved it was also infamous. Naruto liked to call it his inner Gilgamesh, and he often projected this quirk in his personality when facing the enemies that weren't worthy to face him head-on in combat. Instead, Naruto took Gilgamesh's style of standing there, and using his projected weapons lay waste to his enemies from afar. If his opponent was worthy, then Naruto fought them one-on-one, hand-to-hand. Naruto's true achievement, though, was his sniping. Using his Sharingan, in conjunction with his mastery level in archery, had earned him the moniker the Land of Fire's Archer, and later, Konoha's Archer, when the people discovered that he'd come from Konoha. He'd earned the moniker because of his sniping. Usually that meant that he hid, and using his projected bow and arrows, he took out enemies when they least expected it. His record for sniping someone was from 5 miles away, with a clean shot to the man's heart. It was truly impossible to most, especially the other guardians and the candidates, but to the people of the Imperial City, it elevated him more in their eyes as a hero that could accomplish the impossible. Naruto was feeling restless, so he stood and left his room. Naruto walked calmly towards his destination. It was still early, and as the sun hadn't realized it was time to wake up, either had the inhabitants of the Imperial Palace in the capital of the Land of Fire. The exceptions to this rule were the various guardian hopefuls and the servants, who were tirelessly working to prepare for the day. Naruto enjoyed the early morning as he was often left alone, and only really had to deal with the nosy, gossipy kitchen staff or the jealous gazes of those hoping to be selected for the Guardian Corps. Naruto ignored the blushing gazes of the maids and kitchen staff as he casually walked through the kitchens towards his destination, the palace gardens. Naruto had made the exact same journey to the exact same spot since he discovered the palace gardens. They held a view of the entire Imperial City, and since the flowers were in a constant state of bloom, an apparent gift from Hashirama Senju and his wife Mito Uzumaki Senju. The gardens were blessed by Hashirama's chakra and sealed by Mito's Fuinjutsu, so their seasonal blooms lasted longer, and the beautiful fragrance lingered longer. It was for this very reason that Naruto journeyed there every morning to watch the sun rise over the Land of Fire, The scenery and the smells calmed him and was the perfect way for him to start the day. Naruto finally reached his destination and paused to breathe deeply of the garden's scent before hopping onto the high fence that separated the gardens from the kitchens and palace. Naruto sighed in bliss as the cool morning air brushed across his skin, his now waist-length ponytail swaying gently to the wind's rhythm. He was oblivious to the young girls that worked at the palace as they sighed dreamily at him. Romance wasn't something that Naruto strived to understand. Oh, he was well aware that he'd have to carry on the Uzumaki bloodline by taking a wife or 5 if the fire daimyo had his way, but Naruto remained closed off on the topic, choosing to train harder and longer than the other recruits. He wanted to earn his place and not have it given to him for his status. From his vantage point on the wall, Naruto watched the cherry blossoms fall gracefully to the ground. The peace of the courtyard and the chirping birds made it all the more beautiful to him. Your ritual, while soothing to the senses, is tiresome, copycat, Gilgamesh's voice echoed from the depths of Naruto's mind. Naruto ignored the voice. He wasn't going to let Gilgamesh ruin the start of his day. Gilgamesh huffed but remained silent, since he'd essentially repeated the exact same words every day since the ritual first began. Instead of the customary banter between the two of them after a period of silence, the serenity of the morning was interrupted by the screams of the maids and kitchen staff. Naruto reluctantly cracked an eye open and slid it in the screams' direction. Fucking guardians, slurred a male voice as he smashed an expensive bottle of sake onto the wall outside the kitchens. TSK, Naruto clicked his tongue in annoyance at the interruption. Picking up a nearby pebble, Naruto flicked it in the man's direction and watched it hit the drunken man square in the forehead. What? Who did that? The man slurred once more, before his gaze landed on Naruto's slouched form on the wall. Once spotted, Naruto clicked his tongue again in irritation, while the drunken man seemed to sober up at least a little. Are they serious? They send the brat that can't use chakra to try to stop me? The man taunted. How you of all people got accepted for guardian training is beyond me, but hey, they need meat shields, don't they? Keep talking, mongrel, Naruto spoke, projecting his inner Gilgamesh. I was already here, fool, you failed to sense me. But please keep going, give me a reason to remove you from this world. Minoru immediately gulped at Naruto's words and fell silent, though that didn't last for long, and he grew bold enough to speak. I'm not scared of you, freak, Minoru snarled, though the tremor in his voice was unmistakable. Where do you get off talking to your superiors like that, huh? Naruto let out a condescending chuckle. Oh? I'm a freak, am I? And I feel your definition of who's superior over whom is rather twisted. As it is I that is superior to you, I am a king. Minoru blinked, a split second in time gone from the simple action, but that single moment of time cost Minoru deeply. For the next thing Minoru knew, he was falling. Minoru blinked again and grunted in pain as his back hit the dirt. He moved to stand but discovered why he had hit the ground in the first place, as his legs had been severed from his body, right from the thigh down. Blood gushed out and showed no signs of stopping as he started to choke in air at the sight of his bloody stumps that used to be his legs. Minoru wailed in shock as he glanced upwards to see Naruto. Naruto stared down at him as if he were a mere pest. Feel honored that you met your end by my hand, worm, Naruto stated emotionlessly. Minoru couldn't even scream in pain as the mixture of a burning sensation from whatever weapon Naruto had used, and the sheer amount of blood that he'd lost had all but destroyed his pain receptors, leaving him completely numb as Naruto simply raised a hand. The hand descended lazily, and that was all Minoru saw as seconds later a lance of pure gold pierced his chest dead center. Minoru only gurgled and choked on his own blood before his body slumped to the ground, a silent look of shock forever plastered on his face. You chakra users never cease to disgust me, Naruto spat to the now dead ex-candidate. You think chakra makes you superior to me? How foolish a thought. Naruto tilted his head towards the sunrise and sighed sadly as it had already risen, signifying the new day. TCH, the ignorant fool cost me my morning entertainment, Naruto commented. I'm starting to think that I should have made him suffer more. Next time I won't use mana to destroy an enemy's nerve receptors, I'll let them feel the pain for disturbing my free time. Era little king, you're starting to sound more like me every day, Gilgamesh stated humorously. I wonder if this is what a parent feels like. I'm so proud. Don't patronize me, Gilgamesh. You may have granted me this power, but your ideals are not my own, Naruto thought in annoyance. I may agree with you on these fools, but I want to help people, not just watch them burn for your entertainment. Naruto could hear Gilgamesh's quiet growl before he huffed and disappeared back into his mindscape, but not before giving one last comment. One day you will understand, my little heir. Naruto blinked as the Uzumaki king disappeared into his mind's depths. What was that supposed to mean? Shrugging, Naruto turned his gaze to the shadow of a tree and whispered, Skull, come forth. Less than a second later, Skull appeared and bowed lowly. You called my king? Yes, please dispose of this. Refuse. His blood is not fit for the grounds of the Imperial Palace, Naruto commented. Skull bowed and several more members of the Black Mask Division materialized from seemingly nothing at all. They took Minoru's remains and sank back into the shadows, whilst another used a long-forgotten water jutsu to erase the evidence. Naruto sighed as Skull left with his mysterious comrades back into the shadows. He couldn't figure them out. Were they human or summons? He glanced at the sun and grimaced. He was going to be late if he didn't hurry. He just hoped that his day didn't get any worse. Little did Naruto know that he jinxed himself, or that on that particular day, he'd earn his second moniker. Mikoto Uchiha woke feeling well rested and content with her life. True, she was still married to that monster Fugaku, but her life had only gotten better as had her relationship with her son, Naruto. They often spent the afternoons together, either over tea and conversation or just in silence playing a game or two of shogi. There were the rare moments where her day wasn't so full in the capital, where they trained with each other, but with Naruto training with the guardians and undertaking missions on the fire daimyo's behalf. Completely for training's sake, of course, she was often left to her thoughts, and they drifted to her home in Konoha. Despite her youngest son's attitude, she did care for Sasuke's well-being, but it was Itachi that had her worried. Itachi had apparently become a bit of a recluse, and he had been acting strangely. Things were continuing to stir amongst the Uchiha clan, and Mikoto knew it. She wasn't blind to the machinations of her husband, and Fugaku had alluded to a plan that would restore the Uchiha's rightful place, or so he said. Mikoto glanced to the sky. It was time for breakfast, and knowing Naruto and his training habits, he'd likely neglect to eat. He really did enjoy the simple pleasure of watching the sunrise and sunset. Her thoughts were interrupted by a crow flying through the open window. It took her a mere second to recognize it as one of Itachi's summons, and she quickly took the attached scroll. She read the information in disbelief. Her clan, her family was in trouble. They were planning a coup and they intended to strike tomorrow night. Mikoto stood hurriedly and wrote a reply stating that she'd make haste and rush there to try to stop it, just like Itachi had suggested in her fear and anxiety. Mikoto never noticed that while a good forgery, it wasn't Itachi's handwriting, and the crow was simply an ordinary crow that had been trained and disguised with a subtle genjutsu that she would have noticed if her Sharingan had been active. In her rush, she informed one of the passing guardians of her intentions. The young woman nodded and took off to inform the fire daimyo and the king of Yuzu. Naruto had a bad feeling. It was the kind of feeling that he usually started to get when really bad news was coming, and judging by the rushing and quite nervous-looking guardian running towards the fire daimyo and himself, it was going to be very bad news. The guardian, in a testament to her training, didn't even sound winded, and once the relayed message was delivered, she left. Naruto immediately stood and glared at the floor and thought, "I'm sure that she'll be fine." Lord Uzumaki, the fire daimyo, spoke. "Your mother is as strong as some of my guardians. I would even recruit her if I could." Naruto shifted his gaze to the daimyos. "Something's not right, my lord." Fire daimyo Masahiko Shinji tensed as he remembered the last time Naruto gazed at him like that. It was just before the Ninja Guardian coup, and that was thankfully over before it began thanks to the combined efforts of Asuma, Chiriku, and Naruto. "You really believe something is wrong?" he asked seriously. "Of course," Naruto responded promptly. "But I will have one of my summons shadow her and reverse summon me, if something is amiss." The daimyo nodded thoughtfully. "A very reasonable suggestion, but she's your mother." "Meaning my lord," Naruto instantly replied. "My training here and your safety has precedence. Do not mistake my blasé attitude for complete indifference. I would rather drop everything to follow and protect her." The daimyo nodded, very pleased by the answer. "Then go. I'm sure you can catch her if you rush." Naruto blinked. "Are you quite certain, my lord?" At the fire daimyo's nod, Naruto didn't even hesitate to teleport out of the room, and minutes later, Naruto burst into his mother's quarters. He found the letter and analyzed it with a critical eye, Sharingan activated. He noticed the loops and the slight tremor that the person who'd written it had tried to conceal, but to Naruto, who had read a letter from Itachi in the past, it was clearly a forgery. If the letter was to be understood correctly, the Uchiha clan was attempting a little coup, but why would they want Mikoto to be there? Naruto's eyes widened as the thought hit him. Whoever has planned this wants to make sure that there are no witnesses, and that means no Uchiha clan survivors. That means that they intend to dispose of my mother? The sheer audacity of these fools. They will pay for trying to take something that belongs to me. Mere minutes later, a fully equipped Naruto was rushing out of the Imperial City at full speed. Something is very wrong, Naruto muttered to himself, his Sharingan eyes active and memorizing absolutely everything that crossed his path. I need to be faster. If I cut across the borders of Kiri and Wave and I can match her estimated traveling speed, then I could cut her off and safely travel with her to uncover what this is all about. Naruto's mind made up, he changed course, intent catching his mother. She was going to die, she knew she was. This revelation had forced her to abandon her spot at the garbage bins, and now she was content to find a quiet and preferably pretty place to die. She had been suffering for so long now. She was already 14 years old with almost 5 years of that time spent on the street, and she managed to prevent being attacked like the other girls by hiding under copious amounts of dirt and garbage. Why did you do it, Two-chan?" The girl sniffled to herself. "Why did you kill Ka-chan and try to kill me?" Unfortunately for the young girl, someone overheard her sniffling. "Well, what do we have here?" A gruff voice burped. "Oh no, that's the sex trade slaver," the girl sobbed as the man walked closer. "And he's drunk too." The man was rather diminutive in stature, and possessed a chubby appearance. He was well known in Kiri as a man that could provide certain people with certain tastes. His business was the pleasure of others, and he used any means necessary in obtaining merchandise that would further please his customers and line his pockets. The man burped again, the smell of cheap sake wafting through the air as he closed the distance between the girl and himself. The winter snow did little to help the girl's situation, as the wetness that it provided had removed some of her protective camouflage of dirt and grime, and helped to reveal her 14-year-old form. "You are a pretty little thing, aren't you?" he sneered. "You'd fetch a lovely price with some of my more particular clients." The girl shivered, and not just because of the snow, as the man staggered closer. The girl would have had the ability to defend herself against the drunk were it not for her weak and emaciated state, so instead all she could do was let out a weak scream as he grabbed her by her hair roughly. The man dragged her by her hair towards the closest building in which he did business, but he didn't count on a soft-spoken, but deadly voice stopping him. "Release the girl and leave midget," the voice hissed, "or I shall take great pleasure in tearing you limb from limb." Naruto was rushing through the forest and making excellent time as well. His ability to utilize his mana was so refined now that he didn't break a sweat as he pumped it into his legs to increase his speed and reaction time. A weak and muffled scream drew his attention and caused him to come to a complete stop. He hesitated briefly. He needed to get to his mother as fast as he could, but his very sense of justice and honor compelled him to investigate the source. "Your bleeding heart is unbecoming my heir," Gilgamesh's voice echoed with a hint of aggravation. "And I'm pretty sure that I don't care what you think at the moment, Gilgamesh," Naruto mentally retorted. "Just because you don't value life as I do, doesn't give you command over me. Don't make the mistake of thinking that I have to obey your whims." Gilgamesh growled, but otherwise when silent his time would come, and he'd show his heir the right way of thinking. Naruto nodded to himself, as he made up his mind he'd investigate the source himself. He created a clone to move ahead and scout the path. Perhaps he'd get lucky and come across his mother. The scene that he arrived to was of a short, fat man that was dragging a girl maybe a year older than him by her hair towards a shady-looking warehouse. Naruto wasn't stupid. He knew exactly what the man was thinking of doing to the girl, and he'd seen the man's picture in the Fire Daimyo's folder of targets to avoid in business deals. The man's name was Gato. "Release the girl and leave midget," Naruto hissed, "or I shall take great pleasure in tearing you limb from limb." The short man turned drunkenly in anger for being interrupted and insulted, but whatever he was about to say vanished as he gazed upon the voice's owner. It was a child with long black hair and a high ponytail. He was dressed in high-quality ninja attire, and his eyes were a crimson red that glowed with a dangerous glint. The man was no fool, and he let the girl go as if burned. Fine," he stuttered. "Take the bitch and leave me alone." Naruto debated as to whether or not to end the man's existence, but ended up just watching the man run for dear life before shifting his gaze to meet the girl's. "Are you injured, girl?" Naruto spoke clearly. She shook her head negatively, and he sighed in relief, though that changed as she opened her mouth to respond to him. "I am fine, Ninja-sama," she smiled. "Then I believe it would be best for you to return to your home," he suggested. "I no longer have a home to return to, Ninja-sama," she responded sadly. "Why do you address me in such a manner?" he replied with curiosity. "Furthermore, what is your name, girl?" The girl smiled a truly beautiful smile in response. "You saved me, Ninja-sama, and I am thankful for it. That man would have sold me as a prostitute." "I see," Naruto pondered out loud. He seemed to be deep in thought and appeared conflicted as well. "I cannot just leave her here alone," Naruto thought to himself. "But I've already lost too much time by saving her. I'll offer her protection and have her follow me. That would be the best course of action. My clone hasn't dispelled, so I can assume that the path ahead is clear of danger. If you wish, you may come with me," Naruto finally spoke. "I offer you protection from the retaliation that would no doubt arise from my stopping that man." The girl's smile was infectious, and Naruto smiled softly in return. "Well?" She happily nodded her consent and bowed her head. She had finally found someone that would treat her well, and she'd serve him faithfully. "I accept your offer, Ninja-sama. My name is Naruto," Naruto introduced. "Naruto Uzumaki again. I ask you, what is your name?" "Naruto-sama," she chirped happily, testing the name of her savior on her tongue. She quickly memorized her new master's name before answering his question. "My name is Haku." Whilst the real Naruto saw to the protection of the girl, Haku, his Kage Bunshin, had made an incredible amount of progress. The clone had picked up his mother's signature and was getting closer to her location. Mikoto was cutting cleanly through the land of fire. No hidden routes or double backing, either just a straight line through to Konoha, and her speed was amazing. It was moments like these that reminded Naruto that his mother was still considered an A-rank kunoichi. The clone stopped rather suddenly. He felt like he just crossed into another dimension and a sign to the mana user, clone or not, that he'd crossed into a bound field but was a genjutsu or fuinjutsu, or maybe rarer still, both. The clone wasn't about to risk his progress though. Channeling his mana, the clone pressed his hand, palm down, into the soil. He subtly sent a wave of his mana into his surroundings, forceful enough to differentiate his surroundings, but not enough to alert the user /S to his position. He frowned at the results. There was nothing wrong according to his sensory technique. That in itself of course was suspicious, but he'd clearly felt the shift. So either the user /S was of a higher level of fuinjutsu than he was, or he'd imagined the feeling. "There's no time to second guess myself," the clone thought. "My original must be made aware of this though. I don't possess enough mana to investigate or summon. I have no choice but to dispel and notify my creator. The clone dispelled himself seconds later and transferred the knowledge to his creator. Naruto paused in his step and blinked as the information he'd received from his clone sorted itself out in his brain. Shit, Naruto swore. Whatever that bound field was, it was created by a master in the arts of old. Naruto unsealed the map from his pack and unrolled it, using the trunk of the tree as a makeshift board. He used a pencil to mark the location on his map, and then surveyed the surrounding area. The land of waves, Naruto mused thoughtfully. Interesting, perhaps it's an Uzumaki outpost, warded by those who aren't of Uzumaki blood. Pardon me, Naruto-sama, why have we stopped? Haku's soft voice sounded from beside him. Ah, Haku, my clone just dispelled itself, Naruto answered. I will carry onwards, but I'll have a clone escort you back to the daimyo's palace. My clone will provide for your care until I return. Haku looked to complain, but thought twice on the matter. In the end, she settled on merely nodding and replied softly as her voice was, while her dough-colored brown eyes were full of worry. I understand, Naruto-sama, Haku replied softly. Please stay safe. Naruto raised a brow. Less than an hour of traveling together after he saved her, fed her, and then treated her wounds, and she was this devoted to him? The memory of Sakura and her mother flashed into his mind, and he sighed. Haku, Naruto spoke calmly. I do not need nor want mindless servants. Haku's face became ashen, and tears welled up in her eyes. I understand, Naruto-sama, do you want me to go? Naruto silently cursed his bleeding heart as it thumped painfully. No, Haku. I'm merely telling you that I don't want a servant, but I do want a friend. Haku blinked her still teary eyes. I don't understand, Naruto-sama. Haku, I want you to be my friend, not my servant. Naruto supplied. I have too many people that simper about me and treat me politely, but no one to be a true friend. Will you please be my friend, Haku? Haku blushed softly. She really did find the one person that she could call precious to her. Haku nodded shyly. Hi, Naruto-kun. Naruto beamed a smile. There you go, Haku-chan. Haku turned her head and blushed once more while Naruto created another clone, though he reinforced this new one with extra mana. I want you to return to the capital and take Haku-chan here with you. Give the fire daimyo my promise of an explanation on my return, but I want you to stay with Haku and oversee her recovery until I do return. Questions? Naruto ordered his clone. Upon receiving a negative from his clone, he nodded. Thinking twice on the matter, Naruto looked to a shadowy tree and called for Skull. Skull, I have need of you. What is thy command, my king? Skull spoke in his gravelly voice. I command you to follow my clone and Haku-chan here, Naruto commanded as he gestured to the two of them, and ensure that they reach the daimyo's palace as soon as possible. It will be done, my lord, Skull intoned as he melted back into the tree's shadow. Naruto nodded and turned to speak to Haku again. Haku surprised him as instead of fear reflected in her eyes overseeing Skull, a curious gleam was there instead. I promise to return soon. I don't know when, but you will be well cared for until I do. Okay? Naruto spoke softly. Haku nodded shyly and waved goodbye to Naruto as he turned and zoomed off. Naruto-kun, Haku thought blissfully as a blush found its way onto her face. My precious person. Naruto took in a deep breath as he watched Haku leave with his shadow clone. It was the first time, in a long time, that he'd felt so conflicted about another person, aside from his makeshift family. He couldn't, and certainly wouldn't deny that he'd become distant and even arrogant since he'd merged with Gilgamesh. The fact that he'd also inherited the Uzumaki ancestors' infamous temper was certainly clear to any that knew what to look for. His reason for being conflicted was due to the already strong display of devotion from the doe-eyed girl. Never before had someone, other than his family, drawn his caring side out so easily, and while the human Uzumaki in him liked it, the Uzumaki side inherited from Gilgamesh despised it. Emotions were an attachment that he couldn't afford until he'd grown enough in power to protect his loved ones. Naruto's eyes widened suddenly as he instantly realized that he'd sounded just like Danzo Shimura. After the destruction of Root, by his order, the Black Mask Division had provided a complete dossier on the man, complete with a full psychological profile. Naruto effectively knew how the man worked. His Sharingan helped greatly in that regard, as memorizing the man's methods proved rather useful, especially when reviewing Danzo's training programs and strategic mind. The man was truly despicable. But while despicable, his methods paved the way for new military training that the Hokage and his pseudo-grandfather, Hiruzen, had implemented instantly to the original ANBU training. Within the next year, the fresh crop of ANBU would prove to the elemental nations that Konoha was still at the forefront in military training, at least. Where their ANBU were concerned, their genin training program needed reviewing, but that wasn't necessary to the task at hand. Shaking his head to clear his thoughts, Naruto exhaled sharply. Upon the release of his breath, he shot off the ground and into the trees like a rocket, traveling at incredible speeds to make up for the lost time. He'd reach Konoha in 2 hours if he kept up his pace. Please be fine, Ka-chan, Naruto prayed. Haku watched the Naruto clone like a hawk, watching how her savior moved, breathed and surveyed everything with startling precision. Even something simple, like navigating his way through the forests of Haino Kuni, the land of fire, seemed to come so easily to him that it bordered on an art form. Her savior's clone's eyes picked up the smallest of details, and all but glided with the shifting air currents without needing to stop or adjust, like she'd seen so many others with shinobi training do. "You are staring, Haku-san," the clone commented, breaking Haku's thoughts. "Please inform me if you require a break or medical attention." Haku blushed at being caught but replied quickly. "I am alright, I promise. I was just distracted by your ability to navigate the terrain." "I see, is it your desire to learn?" Naruto inquired without pausing in his pace. "The ninja arts," Haku pondered out loud. "Perhaps the medical arts, rather than ninjutsu, but I want to master the Yuki clan's Kekkei Genkai." "Is that so? In that case, I'd be happy for you to join me in my training," Naruto replied calmly. Haku faltered briefly in her steps at Naruto's reply, and she looked to him in shock. "Just like that, you'd allow me such freedom?" Naruto suddenly stopped on a branch and looked to her thoughtfully. "Yes, just like that. You seem to forget that my creator wished you to be his/my friend, not servant. Like he explained earlier, he has too many people who simper and serve him. He has no true friends, outside of an acquaintance from Konoha called Sakura Haruno. I believe that he would want you to reach your full potential. He/I we have no intentions of denying you your chance to achieve your goals in life." Haku's eyes started to mist over, as tears formed. No one bar her now deceased mother believed that she could accomplish her dream of mastering the ice-release bloodline, but even then, her mother forced her to hide her natural-born gifts from her father. "Thank you," was all she could whisper in reply. "You're welcome," the clone replied hesitantly. He was nervous and inexperienced with comforting others, after all. "We should press on, Haku-san. The Imperial City is still several hours away, and I promised my creator to have you there as soon as possible." Haku nodded with a small but happy smile on her face. "Let's go then." Naruto finally caught a glimpse of Konoha in the distance. He was tired, both physically and mentally, but he was on a tight schedule. Landing in front of the check-in station, manned by the infamous Eternal Chunin in a rather impressive fashion, as he'd created a small crater due to the enormous amount of mana running through his body, he immediately presented his guardian's identification, before quickly signing in and speeding off in a scarily impressive imitation of his father's Hiraishin no Jutsu. He came to an abrupt halt as he came upon the gates to the Uchiha district. To his immediate joy, his mother was standing there looking at him in surprise and a little nervousness. Naruto breathed deeply as he simply strolled up in a brisk pace and hugged her tightly. "Don't ever just disappear like that, Ka-chan," Naruto murmured softly. "I was worried. You do know that the letter from Itachi was fake, right?" Mikoto gasped at his revelation. "I didn't," she replied. "I thought it was genuine, that is until I ran into Itachi here." Naruto shifted his fully matured Sharingan gaze to Itachi and watched the boy closely. Itachi was genuinely surprised to see that Naruto possessed the Sharingan, let alone a fully matured set. But he wasn't a genius for nothing and he immediately connected the dots. "I see, mother's irregular hospital visits," Itachi commented. "You are the reason for her blood and chakra infusion appointments years ago." Naruto narrowed his gaze at Itachi, but it didn't deter the boy from continuing. "Nevertheless, you do possess the Sharingan," Itachi continued, before a genuine smile made its way onto his face. "I'm rather glad to see a non-Uchiha possess our sacred bloodline. I was beginning to lose hope about the future of our clan. The inbreeding alone has caused our once great clan to fall into hatred and insanity. Father is a perfect example, though I do believe that he's nothing more than a puppet at the moment." "What do you mean, Itachi-san?" Naruto inquired, while Gilgamesh listened closely. "What I mean, Uzumaki-sama," Itachi responded, "is that my father's actions are clearly not of his own volition. Or at least he's not the architect of his crazy plan. My father is unfortunately not that bright a man." Mikoto gasped at Itachi's comment. Clearly a lot had changed in Konoha since her departure. Itachi had shown more emotion, despite his emotionless face, than she'd ever witnessed before, and it pleased her to no end. Her son was growing up well. "We have to go now," stressed Itachi. "Father has allowed an unknown man into the Uchiha temple, and his chakra alone is dark in nature." Naruto twitched as Gilgamesh informed him of an interesting piece of information. "The Uchiha temple once belonged to the Uzumaki clan," Naruto revealed, as he tapped his chin in thought. "It has several fuinjutsu sealing arrays that are vital to the village's security, and if a single seal was altered or destroyed, the village would be open to all enemies, foreign or domestic. It would take Hokage-sama, Lady Namikaze, Jiraiya-sensei and I to restore them, and that could take months, even up to a year to accomplish." Itachi's gaze narrowed and Mikoto gasped. "Then we can waste no more time dawdling," Itachi firmly stated. "Agreed, Itachi-san," Naruto promptly replied. "I am skilled in all ranges of combat, though I excel at long and close-range combat more so than mid-range." "And I know mother excels at mid-range combat," Itachi pondered. "Whilst I am like you in regards to combat proficiency." "Then we appear to complement each other's individual skills," Naruto concluded, before gesturing in the direction of the Uchiha temple. "Excellent, I believe I speak for all of us when I say, after you, Itachi-san." Itachi smiled at the comment. He liked the Uzumaki. Mikoto watched the interaction with great interest. She'd often pondered the outcome of these two meeting, and it appeared as though she had her answer. Mikoto smiled at the scene. This was what she wanted her family to be like. Itachi spun and launched himself into the compound, many Uchiha civilians watching in awe as he did so. Naruto and Mikoto followed suit and followed the young Uchiha. They were blurs to the many confused onlookers. They could tell something was wrong, but they could do nothing but watch the trio head towards their most sacred of places, the Uchiha temple. Haku was in awe as she watched her savior's clone speak to the fire daimyo. The clone was completely at ease, even though he was addressing one of the most powerful men in the entire elemental nations. She watched as they discussed various topics in relatively quiet tones, before the clone gestured to her, and then to the imperial palace. The fire daimyo adopted a rather knowing look, before nodding to the clone. The fire daimyo has granted you sanctuary. As you are under my personal protection, Naruto's clone informed her. We will rest here and get you treated medically while waiting for word from the boss. Haku nodded shyly. The kindness shown to her wasn't something she was used to, and Naruto was already becoming the most precious person to her. His continued kindness and his actions to help her further cemented that truth. Naruto wasn't just her precious person, he was her most precious person, and she died to protect him. As Itachi, Naruto, and Mikoto arrived at the Uchiha temple, they watched as Fugaku spotted them and rushed one of the figures inside whilst he and the other figure turned to them, preparing to fight. The trio came to a complete stop in front of Fugaku and the other figure. Itachi-san, correct me if I'm wrong, Naruto inquired. But did you not say that only one man had accompanied your father? Misinformation is used on both enemies and allies, Itachi replied casually. I didn't think you'd complain about it though. I don't need you to lecture me on the art of war, Itachi-san, Naruto chuckled. And I'm certainly not complaining, I was merely stating the obvious. You got something wrong. If Itachi reacted to the barb, he didn't show it, but a small smile appeared on his face. Oh, we must play shogi sometime, Uzumaki-sama, Itachi offered. Your gracious invitation is accepted, Itachi-san, Naruto replied, smiling back. And please, you may address me by my first name. As Naruto and Itachi bantered back and forth, Mikoto noticed that Fugaku was getting rather irritated by their civility towards one another. If she didn't know any better, she'd think that they were doing it deliberately. Wait, they were. Fugaku's irritation was going to make him reckless. It was a genius move by her two children. Enough, Fugaku commanded. He turned to the figure next to him and spoke to the individual. Orochimaru-sama ordered you to help me, so help me, fool. The figure's hand twitched, and they turned their head to glare at Fugaku. Orochimaru-sama ordered me to stall his enemies, a male voice spoke. Not to help you, Uchiha. Fugaku scowled and raised a kunai to show the peasant who was boss, but he found himself being sent flying into a stone pillar from the temple, his body pierced to it by multiple bones. Fugaku Uchiha was dead in seconds. The method of disposal, however, notified both Itachi and Naruto to the only clan that possessed such a skill, the Kagaya clan. Interesting, came Naruto's whistled response. A Kagaya with the Shikatsumiyaku dead bone pulse still yet lives. The newly identified Kagaya removed his cloak and revealed himself to the trio of ninja. And one, the Kagaya tilted his head in respect to the trio. You are not like others that I've faced. You're all calm, collected, and in control of your emotions. It's a pity that you must meet your end here. I am Kimimaro Kagaya and I am pleased to make your acquaintance. Well, your manners are impeccable, Kimimaro-san, Naruto responded. He paused before continuing. I can address you as Kimimaro, can't I? Kimimaro nodded softly. Address me as you wish, for you shall all perish here. In that case, Naruto smiled in response. I am Naruto Uzumaki. A pleasure, Kimimaro-san. Mikoto and Itachi followed suit and introduced themselves, though they found it rather strange to introduce themselves to a foe. Forgive them, Kimimaro-san, Naruto continued to smile. It unnerved the Kagaya for some reason. They are not familiar with formalities pertaining to clans such as ours, us being related and all. That confused the Kagaya. We are not related, Uzumaki-san. Please, Naruto is fine, Naruto chided. But we are related. The Kagaya clan was originally the outcasts of the Hyuga clan, their blood relatives. The Kagaya clan sought their own path, and created a peace pact with the original king Gilgamesh. The Uzumaki clan and the Kagaya clan were then joined by marriage, your first female Shikatsumiyaku user, and the original king of Yuzu. So in short, Kimimaro-san, we are related. Kimimaro stared at the strange Uzumaki. He had family? Sure, the Uzumaki didn't share the dead bone pulse bloodline, but they were related. A pity. This does not change your fate, Kimimaro replied. Lord Orochimaru has tasked me with stalling you, so stall you I shall. Please remain where you are, lest I am forced to terminate you, Uzumaki-san. Well, I did try, Naruto shrugged, before a truly powerful glare was leveled at the Kagaya. And if you insist on being formal, it's King Uzumaki to you. Kimimaro shivered. That look was all too similar to a certain snake Sannin. It was a look that demanded respect and radiated power. I may have to use my curse seal to fight these ones, Kimimaro thought. That thought was frozen, however, as a thick blanket of spiritual energy engulfed the entire area. He cautiously glanced at the Uzumaki king, and he instantly regretted the action. Naruto's eyes were glowing ominously. The red of the Sharingan spinning slowly only increased the intimidation of the sight. Itachi and Mikoto's gazes weren't helping. Perhaps fighting the Sharingan is a bad idea, Kimimaro shivered. Before Kimimaro could blink, Naruto vanished in a sudden blur of speed. He appeared behind him in the blink of an eye and thrust down. Kimimaro wasn't worried, that was until a weapon magically materialized out of thin air. Naruto growled as he pushed his weight into the strike, and then, something that Kimimaro couldn't fathom occurred. Naruto's blade sliced into the flesh of his shoulder, effortlessly cutting through his tissue as if it were paper. This was impossible though. The Kagaya had instantly reinforced that area of his body with his bloodline, and it shouldn't have been possible for the Uzumaki to wound him, but he had. Kimimaro hissed and forced his bones to attack the black-haired Uzumaki. The strike hit true and Naruto's eyes widened before he coughed out blood and hit the ground. Kimimaro was about to check the corpse when it suddenly burst into a hauntingly beautiful cloud of black ravens. He swerved his head around just in time to avoid an otherwise fatal strike to the head, courtesy of Mikoto, who'd unsealed her legendary katana called Black Blade, so named for its 100% pure chakra blade, tainted by the blood of the blacksmith who created it. The blade had come out looking completely black, though once dyed in blood, it looked as though it was drinking it up. He struck her in her left breast, but she too then dissolved into black ravens. Kimimaro's gaze turned to Itachi. He was the one casting genjutsu. Kimimaro charged forward and lifted his hand towards the Uchiha boy. Teshi Sendan, 10-finger drilling bullets, Kimimaro cried out. Itachi simply flickered out of existence and appeared behind the Kagaya, effortlessly dodging the then finger fragments of bone launched at him. Itachi gracefully flowed through hand signs before taking a deep breath and whispering his technique. Katan, Gokaku no Jutsu, Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique, Itachi simply whispered, almost completely silent. A giant ball of fire left Itachi's mouth and flew at Kimimaro. Its speed was astounding, as it was almost triple the speed of a normal version of the technique. Kimimaro spun his body, his bones creating a shield around him. He took the attack, but staggered at the power behind it. This Uchiha was more powerful than he appeared to be. He had a moment to register that another was in his personal space, before Mikoto somehow materialized above him, angling her black blade to take his arm off. Kimimaro shifted his weight and redirected the blow, but was unable to dodge the kunai that found its way into his right thigh, courtesy of Itachi. The teamwork and effortless flow of battle between the two Uchiha were astounding to the Kagaya. It made him grow quite concerned as to the outcome of this battle. Wait, Uchiha? Where was the Uzumaki? His answer came from a long, pure white arrow that pierced his chest, narrowly missing his heart. Kimimaro gasped in pain. He couldn't die like this. He would have to use the cursed seal. Willing the energy to come forth, he was surprised when it didn't respond. Kimimaro tried again, but yet again, it didn't respond. He was about to try again when pain registered in his mind. Glancing down, he saw another pure white arrow lodged in his chest, right on top of the cursed seal. Another followed, right through his left arm, then a secondary arrow to the right arm. Two more followed to the legs, right where the hip met the leg, crushing his sockets. He refused to cry out in pain though, and held his head up high in defiance to the trio that had brought him to his knees without much effort. He was helpless as both Uchiha raised their respective weapons and stabbed them through his stomach. The last thing he saw was Naruto approaching slowly. He murmured something to the woman Uchiha before he gently placed a thumb to his forehead and his palm to his chest. Then there was darkness. Kimimaro Kagaya was defeated. The trio's short victory was cut short as a shockwave shook the ground. Looks like Orochimaru found the Fuinjutsu pillar, Naruto commented idly. You may wish to alert the Hokage, Itachi-san. He's already en route, but a status report might stop any unnecessary loss of life. Of course, Naruto-san, Itachi replied. He vanished in a puff of smoke seconds later, indicating the Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique. Naruto turned to Mikoto and gestured to the screaming civilians nearby. You should go and calm your people, Kachan. Mikoto nodded, proud of her son and of how far he'd come as both a human and a guardian. She forgot about Orochimaru though. As soon as Mikoto had left, Naruto turned his attention to the temple's entrance. I guess I have a snake to distract. Orochimaru was rather pleased with himself. Tricking Fugaku had been child's play, a mere promise of power, to return the prestige to the Uchiha clan, and the man was an obedient servant to be used. His desire for the Sharingan was on hold at this point. It wouldn't stop him from taking a child or two on the way out, but his current goal was the infamous Uzumaki Fuinjutsu ceiling arrays that lay innocently and unprotected in the temple's darkest depths. It took him several twists, turns and redirections, but he found it. The central Fuinjutsu pillar. Not only did it hold the future of Konoha's defenses, but it also held the secrets to perfecting his cursed seals. He lifted his arm to touch it and instantly drew back as a powerful surge of electricity cut his approach. Orochimaru frowned, so close yet it appeared to be still too far out of his reach. No matter, he had the ability to decipher them without touching them. He'd have to return to destroy Konoha's defenses later. He ignored the shockwave as he activated his copying jutsu, so he could copy the writings. He heard the slow approaching steps of an unknown person and turned. The boy in front of him was clearly an Uchiha, but how did he navigate an Uzumaki temple so easily? Grinning at his stroke of fortune, Orochimaru turned to face the child, removing his cloak in the process. Naruto used the memories granted to him by Gilgamesh to navigate the maze that was the old Uzumaki, now Uchiha temple. The temple was given to the Uchiha, by their demands, so that the peace treaty could be settled. It seemed that the Uchiha clan weren't as foolish as they appeared to be by Gilgamesh. They knew that there was something of worth there, they just didn't know what, and now this Orochimaru had discovered what was there: the Uzumaki clan's curse seals. Sure, the security and defense seals were there too, but any seal master worth their salt would kill to get their hands on the forbidden knowledge that the seals held. They were sealed there, never to return after the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju, used them in a crude fashion to imprison the minds of his ANBU, thus the birth of the root seal of silence. The Uzumaki had forever sealed that knowledge away, but Orochimaru found it. The question was how? It didn't matter, all that mattered at that moment was stopping the snake Sine, or at least delay him until the Hokage arrived. Finally reaching the central pillar chamber, he was startled to find the room alight from the seals on the pillar. Did Orochimaru have an Uzumaki copying technique? He must have, or the seals would remain dormant. Naruto calmly walked into the room, watching as Orochimaru smoothly turned whilst discarding his cloak in one movement. As the face of the snake Sannin was revealed, Naruto's left eye twitched and his eyes narrowed into a sharp glare, Sharingan active. Orochimaru smirked as he raised an arm and instantly serpents were unleashed into the room, heading right for Naruto. 20 feet away, Naruto raised an arm. 15 feet away, he summoned his mana. 10 feet away, and Naruto had already created his weapons. 5 feet away, Naruto lazily pointed to the snake Sannin, right on him, and they were cut into ribbons, whilst Orochimaru was astounded when he was suddenly surrounded by blades, axes, lances and spears. There seemed to be no escape, but it was his curiosity that had been piqued. He'd never even heard of an Uchiha with this ability. He had to have this child. Using what knowledge of the curse seals he had gleaned, along with his already brilliant skill, he struck. Quicker than Naruto could realize, even with his Sharingan, he found Orochimaru had used a hole in his technique and his neck had extended, just like his summons. Seconds later he felt excruciating pain erupt from his neck. He screamed as his body felt like it was on fire, whilst Orochimaru simply watched as the various weapons fell to the ground and shattered like glass. Coup, he chuckled ominously. I don't know your name, child, but with that mark, you will seek me out soon. But dear me, it seems we have guests waiting outside and it would be a shame to leave without greeting them. Orochimaru left Naruto there, gasping and screaming in pain. He walked through the maze-like labyrinth and revealed himself to his waiting audience. Said audience consisted of the Minato Namikes, Kushin and Namikes, Hiruzen Sarutobi, Tsunade Senju, Mikoto Uchiha and Itachi Uchiha, along with several platoons of ANBU. Coup, Orochimaru snickered. Hello there, dear sensei, how lovely to see you again. And Tsunade, a pleasure as always. All we need now is that big oaf Jiraiya, and we'd be a complete set. The various Leafnines growled, but it was Hiruzen that spoke. Orochimaru, you're surrounded, he spoke fiercely. Give up now and surrender. Orochimaru cackled. Surely you're joking, dearest sensei. Did you honestly believe that I came here without an escape strategy? The ninja all tensed at the statement. Tsunade growled menacingly and spoke. What did you come back for, traitor? Tsunade hissed. Oh dear, sweet Tsunade, Orochimaru spoke, as if speaking to a child. I came for two things, knowledge and the Sharingan. Since the wonderfully talented child that detained me is currently writhing in pain from my little gift, I would say that I was successful. No. Coup. It took seconds for Mikoto to realize just who he meant. And Naruto-kun, what did you do, you monster? His name is Naruto then, Orochimaru pondered. I look forward to seeing just how he uses my little gift, assuming he survives, of course. Mikoto screamed as she ran forward. The snake Sannin swiftly dodged and impaled her with his Kusanagi. He gave a truly ecstatic look that screamed pleasure before he dropped her and glanced back at the group. How disappointing, he chided. I had hoped for a challenge, but I'm afraid that I must be saying goodbye. He ran through a staggering 50 hand signs before slamming his hands onto the ground. This technique has no name yet, he sighed dramatically. I'll be sure to think of one for the next time we meet. Coup. The nearby civilians screamed in fear as a literal army of serpents spewed forth from the ground. They attacked all without mercy. Their venom was far deadlier than their bites were. The Leafnine were a blur of motion. They struck as many as they could, but for every snake they slayed, 10 would replace it. It was never ending, and they weren't sure how to end the technique. Naruto groaned in pain as he shuffled to his side. He whimpered as every movement caused him unfathomable amounts of pain. He could hear Gilgamesh berating him for looking weak in front of the enemy, and for once he couldn't disagree with the ancient king. He had failed miserably. Fighting through the agony, he managed to stand on shaky legs and look to his reflection on a nearby mirrored pillar. The bite mark was still swollen, but his noticeably newest feature was a glowing seal on his chest. It flared an angry red as he gazed at it, almost like it was alive. The seal was a simple singular line that went straight down his chest. At the bottom of the seal, 2 circular lines cut it off, making it appear as 2 almost complete circles. It was completed by another circular line that sat in the opposite direction of the others. And 2, Era little king, Gilgamesh's taunting voice echoed in his head. A 4th heavens feel sealing mark. How appropriate that this is the seal he branded you with. The foolish mongrel thought he's cursed you, but he's blessed you instead. Blessed me? What do you mean, Gilgamesh? Naruto hissed as the pain was still unbearably strong. At least tell me if I can purify it. His answer was silence, and he shrugged awkwardly. Finally getting his balance, Naruto limped out of the temple. As he finally stepped outside, the chaos unleashed was horrible. Many Uchiha civilians and ninja were lying dead, their precious blood dyeing the streets below as children screamed in terror. Naruto hobbled his way over to the steps of the temple, and that's when he saw it. His mother, Mikoto Uchiha, lying there and not moving. Tsunade was struggling to heal everyone, but she was being beaten by the amount of people dying. Naruto didn't hear the cries of worry from Tsunade or Hiruzen, all he saw was Mikoto. Her body lying motionless as blood, her blood pooled around her. Pure, unadulterated fury and hatred swept through him like a fire. It burned through his veins and the seal on his chest lit up to match his fury. Then pain, his eyes burned hotter than he had ever felt before. He felt his eyes changing, but that paled in comparison to the pain in his heart as he gazed upon his mother's body. If he'd paid attention to Tsunade or Hiruzen, he'd have heard their gasps at him awakening the next stage of the Sharingan, the Mangekyo Sharingan. They spun ominously as the triple tomo pattern grew and morphed into a new pattern. The design looked like a pure black gear-looking symbol with a biohazard symbol inside it that merged with the sides. In 3, Naruto ignored everything. His mother was dead. The thought rang through his mind over and over again. He started to breathe heavily as the revelation threatened to force him to shut down, all the while the chaos in the streets rang in his ears. Gilgamesh hissed in frustration. His heir was standing there like a useless mongrel, but now he had an outlet. Humph, you'd better thank me for this, my heir, Gilgamesh grunted. You disappoint me, copycat. A sudden and tremendous amount of spiritual energy erupted from Naruto's body. The seal flared and added to the energy that spiraled around him. It drew the attention of the snake army and they changed course, heading directly for Naruto as the source of the power. Golden armor materialized over Naruto's clothes and his eyes glowed as brightly as the day they first appeared in the council chambers. All of this drew the attention of the civilians and ninja alike, as they looked on in confusion as the snakes left them all alone, in search of the powerful prey. They all gazed upon the golden-clad youth, with his hair whipping around due to the power emanating from him, with the Uchiha recognizing the Sharingan spinning proudly in the golden-clad youth's eyes. Vermin, you dare attack a king's people? Gilgamesh's voice echoed through the now dead silent streets. You disgusting little worms, your punishment is death. Be honored that you perished by the hand of the king of Yuzu. Instantly following the statement, the entire sky behind Naruto lit up as thousands of golden portals appeared. Each portal holding various weapons that not even Naruto's family had seen before. A growl later and hell descended upon the streets. Weapons rained down in a beautiful display of golden light, each one spearing, tearing, slicing and even obliterating the snakes. After what seemed like an eternity, the rain of gold ended and every serpent had been slain, not a single one remained. Civilian and ninja alike all stared at the golden-clad youth in shock. A mere boy had exterminated thousands of snakes like it was child's play. A civilian girl gazed upon the boy and suddenly exclaimed in a hushed, but excited tone, he said he was the king of Yuzu. He's Yuzu's golden king. The shouts of praise echoed through the streets as the civilians, more than the ninja, exclaimed the name with vigor. The moniker Yuzu's golden king had been born. Humph, over already, a pity, Gilgamesh hummed. Remember this moment, my heir, it was by my power that you survived, and didn't I say that you'd understand what I meant eventually? Until next time, copycat. The golden armor vanished in a show of golden petals, awing the crowd. Naruto staggered briefly, before his gaze snapped to his mother's form. He rushed forward and fell to his knees next to her body. Tsunade stepped forward and sighed at her son in all but blood. It was a sad moment, but it was life and death in the ninja world. She raised a glowing hand to Mikoto's body and gasped. She was alive. The poison hadn't killed her. Immediately a whirlwind of action, she barked at her apprentice that had just arrived with the medical teams to help her. Don't worry, Naruto, Tsunade grunted. Mikoto will be fine, I promise. See? She's already improving. And Tsunade was right, as Mikoto's vitals were stabilizing by the second. A tear rolled down Naruto's face. His mother was alive. Everything was going to be alright now. At the revelation, Naruto sighed tiredly and fell into the blissful land of the unconscious. The last words he heard was from a medic Nin. We have another survivor over here, the medic Nin cried. The white-haired child survived. Mikoto Uchiha woke to the sight of white. Her sense of hearing brought her to the conclusion that she was in Konoha Hospital, and that there was someone silently watching over her form. She couldn't tell who it was, but she managed to croak out a guess. And Naruto? She croaked tiredly. No, I'm not Naruto-san, Itachi's collected voice echoed throughout the room. I'm sorry that he is not here to welcome you back to the land of the living, but he too is currently in limbo. That caused her to startle, and she tried to leap from her bed. Orochimaru, what did he do to my son? Mikoto started coughing and Itachi calmly handed his mother a glass of water to relieve her sore throat. Be calm, mother, Itachi soothed. You and he have been unconscious for several weeks. What? She stuttered. I remember Orochimaru, and then nothing. You see, Itachi started, not sure if he should reveal everything. He cleared his throat and continued. You were injured by Orochimaru, mother. You awakened the next evolutionary stage of the Sharingan, known as Mangekyo Sharingan, in your pain at the thought of losing Naruto-san. Mikoto went to interrupt, but Itachi hushed her and continued. Naruto-san saw you and thought you were dead. He too awakened the Mangekyo. How, I do not know, as he does not use chakra, but since I have had Mangekyo for quite some time, I intervened and had your eyes and his transplanted into each other. Shursui and I plan to do the same, but it appears that blood relation is required. Mikoto gasped and brought her shaking hands to her bandaged head. So, I have my Sochi's eyes now? Itachi grunted but made an affirming sound. Wait, Mikoto brought up. You mentioned that we have both been unconscious for weeks, right? Then why hasn't Naruto woken up yet? Itachi hesitated but spoke. I am not completely sure of why he has not awoken, mother. He has adapted to the strain of the Mangekyo well, even quicker than you adapted to the strain, but something is keeping him asleep. Namikaze-sama and Hokage-sama visited him, along with his sister, but for some reason, his sister Yumi-san went berserk and tried to kill Naruto-san. All she managed to do was to destroy the room. Itachi watched his mother struggle with her words, and spared her asking questions by explaining further. It is Hokage-sama's belief that the Kyuubi is somehow involved with her sudden act of aggression. I see, Mikoto finally sighed. In any case, we won't know until he wakes up. Yes, Itachi merely agreed. Yes, all we can do is wait for Naruto-san to wake up. Their momentary silence was disturbed as the ground suddenly shook with frightful power. Itachi snapped into ANBU mode and ordered his mother to stay in her room until Tsunade arrived. The scene he arrived to was the abandoned section of the hospital in ruins. Smoke, fire and debris filled the immediate area, and located in the center of the chaos and destruction was Yumi and Naruto. Minato arrived on the scene a split second later and gasped at the destruction. Yumi was hunched over on herself, with ominous red chakra coating her body, whilst Naruto stood calmly with his hands at his sides. A savage grin was on his face that caused Minato to shiver. Kushina arrived at the scene, followed by Hiruzen and Kakashi, though before any could speak, Naruto's voice cut through the silence. Though to those that knew him it was more like Gilgamesh's voice. Oh, do you think that hiding behind the body of my sister will deter my wrath? His voice called to Yumi. Yumi's form growled in a feral manner and lunged at Naruto, who dodged gracefully and grinned darkly. Then come at me, Kyuubi, Gilgamesh cheered. Come at me and together, we shall recreate the great battle we once waged against each other. I know not how you managed to survive, king of the Uzumaki. A voice definitely not Yumi's growled from her mouth. But I will rip you to pieces. Kyuubi Yumi charged, only to be impaled by several swords and spears that appeared from several golden portals. Kyuubi Yumi howled in hatred and despite the weapons, charged viciously at Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh's savage grin widened and instantly, several new portals opened behind him, unleashing even more ornate weapons than before. They too impaled into Kyuubi Yumi's body, and she fell lifelessly to the ground. Gilgamesh clicked his tongue in disappointment, only to grit his teeth in surprise as Kyuubi Yumi lunged and almost slashed his stomach open. Then I guess you require more exquisite pieces to bring you to your knees before me, Kyuubi, Gilgamesh snarled excitedly. This time, only a dozen portals appeared, but the weapons that revealed themselves were older and more beautiful than the others. They sped through the air and sliced into Kyuubi Yumi's body even easier than the previous weapons. This time, Kyuubi Yumi stayed down for longer, but when she did get back up and charge, she surprised those watching when instead of finishing her mad charge, she jumped back as quickly as possible, and they soon realized why, much to Kushina's surprise. Large golden chains, inscribed with blue markings, wrapped themselves around Kyuubi Yumi's body. They watched in awed shock as Kyuubi Yumi's body started to come to a complete stop as Kyuubi's chakra was forced to dissipate. Remember these, Kyuubi? Gilgamesh taunted playfully. Yankidu, Kyuubi Yumi whimpered. I thought you lacked the mana to bring these back to existence. Gilgamesh gained an insane glint in his eyes as he snarled at the Kyuubi Yumi. You do not get the right to say her name, Kurama. You killed my beloved Enkidu, and you do not get the right to say her name, you filthy beast. Kyuubi Yumi actually gulped at the look in Gilgamesh's eyes. Even the mention of his real name didn't diminish the fear evident in his gaze. The insanity in Gilgamesh's eyes died though, as he realized he had lost his composure and continued as if he hadn't blown up in anger. I did lack the mana, Kyuubi, Gilgamesh snickered. Until that Orochimaru gave the copycat the fourth heavens field sealing mark. Kyuubi Yumi's eyes widened. I am possible, that man, how did he learn an Uzumaki technique? I assume he has an Uzumaki unknowingly helping him, Gilgamesh shrugged. That doesn't matter though, you will die here, and this time no Madara Uchiha will be here to deny me your life by ensnaring you with his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Kyuubi Yumi growled at the mention of Madara as a giant spear of gold with the same blue inscriptions appeared above Gilgamesh's head, but instead of launching, it merely hovered as Gilgamesh gripped his head and snarled. How are you seizing control, copycat? Naruto's mind. Stop, Naruto shouted as he thrashed against the invisible chains holding him down. This is my body, Gilgamesh, Naruto screamed in anger, and even tried ripping the chains apart with his teeth. When that didn't work, he released more mana than he had ever released before in his life, and even though he cracked his teeth, he managed to break free from the chains holding him down. "Reveal yourself, Gilgamesh," Naruto demanded, fury etched in every part of his tone. Gilgamesh did as commanded, though to the outside world, he was still struggling with himself. "You dare to interrupt my vengeance, copycat?" Gilgamesh hissed. "His life is mine to claim." "Bullshit," Naruto snarled. "I don't care what you did to each other in another life. This is my body, you damn parasite, and I will not let you do as you please." "A parasite, am I?" Gilgamesh growled. "I've saved your pathetic body with my mana and magic, and you dare to call me a parasite? I am your king." "You are a remnant of a lost kingdom," Naruto countered. "You may have saved me before, but you only lived because of my body. You, a king, don't make me laugh. You are no one's king now. Face it, Gilgamesh, you are a parasite." "Then perhaps it's time I take your body as mine," Gilgamesh spoke. "You can try," Naruto hissed. And then the battle for Naruto's body began. Real world. Despite the fact that Gilgamesh and Naruto were fighting in Naruto's mind, Naruto seized enough control of his physical body to quickly dash forward and slap a Jinchuriki suppression seal on Yumi. Kyuubi howled in anger, but returned to his seal within his host. Naruto turned to Minato and shoved Yumi's body far away enough for Minato to flash in and take her, but close enough for him to hear his estranged son. "Seal T the area," Naruto begged. "Use a Namikaze seal, not Uzumaki. Then only you can release it." Minato blinked but nodded numbly and did as asked. He sealed the area and flashed back to the others. "I don't think it's over." And he was right, it wasn't. The moment that Minato sealed the area, a strange flutter of mana filled the area and everyone got to see the once great Uzumaki king in his glory. They saw the young man with red eyes and golden hair staring down Naruto with sheer hatred rolling off of him. Minato was glad that he used a powerful seal that allowed them to see and hear what was happening inside it. "Clever copycat, very clever," Gilgamesh grinned. "Use the corporeal world to fight, where my connection to mana is limited due to it residing in your body, well, soon to be my body, but semantics." Naruto managed a smile, but remained focused on Gilgamesh. Then, after almost 10 minutes, they moved. Gilgamesh unleashed a barrage of weapons from all eras, it didn't matter the quality, as he rained down destruction on the sealed battlefield. Naruto gasped tiredly as he dodged the weapons. His ability to replicate them wasn't doing much to counter the battle, and he knew that if it continued at the pace that Gilgamesh had set, then he'd lose. And then there was something wrong with his eyes. He didn't know why, but sending mana to his eyes really hurt, so he reluctantly decided to continue without his Sharingan. "What's the matter, copycat?" crowed Gilgamesh. "No Sharingan and I having trouble with my gifts?" Naruto almost smacked his head. "Of course, I'm fighting him with his power, I need to use my own." "How though? I foolishly trained his skills as much as my own, but his are more dangerous." "Wait a minute. I can use that. It was only a model that I never truly got around to training due to the council incident when I first encountered Gilgamesh. But he won't know about it since he wasn't awake when I thought it up. It's my only chance." "Silently accepting defeat, copycat?" Gilgamesh yelled at him. He dodged the projectiles that Naruto threw at him in response before creating a mana seal around Naruto's body. "It's over, copycat. Your body is mine." Whatever Naruto said couldn't be heard from within the mana seal, so Gilgamesh dropped it and taunted Naruto. "Final words, copycat, really? I thought you had more pride than that." "Shut the fuck up," Naruto cursed loudly, shocking even himself with his language, though he blamed the blacksmith for teaching him those words. "I said dodge this, you damn parasite." Gilgamesh raised an eyebrow in accusation. "Dodge what? Are you delirious?" His words were cut off as two swords, one black-colored and one cloudy-colored, spun at him from behind and sliced both arms nearly completely off. "What are those, Kunsho and Bakuya?" Gilgamesh saw the two blades return to their master, and snarled as he attempted to heal his arms. "You would use those pathetic weapons against my lovely treasures?" Gilgamesh suddenly felt more mana than he had ever sensed from Naruto, and snapped his gaze back to him, only to see that the swords had become a bow and an ornate arrow. He also noticed that both the sealing mark from Orochimaru and the infusion diamond seal were active as well. "Please work, please work, please work," Naruto chanted in his mind. All anyone heard was something that would become words to remember from Naruto from that moment on. "I am the bone of my sword," Naruto hissed with power. The arrow became supercharged with mana, too much mana, and as he released it he snarled. "Die, you parasite, die!" Gilgamesh knew he couldn't dodge. He couldn't use his arms, and since his mana was in Naruto's body he couldn't use any attacks without charging them first. He was going to. Gilgamesh never finished the thought as he was erased from existence. With his death by the hands of his approved heir and host, his cycle of rebirth was also stopped. As the winner, all the spoils went to Naruto. He already had Gilgamesh's knowledge and memories, but now he had complete control over their combined his mana. Still, he had used too much mana, and had even used both seals, though he didn't realize that he'd used the seal from Orochimaru. Naruto saw Minato drop the area seal. He grinned victoriously at Hiruzen and Itachi and then passed out from overusing his power. "That boy is always going to be a regular at the hospital," Hiruzen muttered, though you could see the relief at his victory and worry at his condition. He remembered Naruto describing Gilgamesh to him and his adopted family, so he knew it was Gilgamesh that he was fighting, but it still seemed unreal to think that he was witness to them fighting. Minato and Kushina stared in shock at their unconscious ex-son. He was so young and so very powerful, as well. Before they could go too close to him, Tsunade appeared and scanned him. Jiraiya, have Shizen prepare the recovery room, Tsunade barked. Minato was startled to realize that his sensei had returned, but smiled at the man as he moved to follow Tsunade's instructions. Tsunade, will he be okay? Kushina asked as she tightened her hold on her daughter. I mean, is he still dangerous? Tsunade growled at Kushina, and she winced. Wrong thing to say, Kushina. Naruto is still the king of Yuzu. He's dangerous? Your daughter was the one that attacked him. Tsunade screamed in fury. The security footage shows your daughter marching into Naruto's recovery room and attempting to kill him. Kushina gasped, and Minato looked pensive. Her seal is degrading quicker than we thought. She will need to be observed for a while. That's not all though, Hokage-sama, Kakashi hesitated to add, but he soldiered on. Several civilians witnessed the footage and saw her attack Naruto. Minato grit his teeth. He wasn't surprised that people had witnessed the attack, but he was concerned about what the ramifications would be if Naruto decided to push for a severe punishment. It was his right, of course, but the damning thing about it was that Naruto was the king of Yuzu, the head of the Uzumaki clan. By attacking him, Yumi had committed treason against her king and a much-beloved member of the Fire Daimyo's courts. This is bad, Minato muttered. But we cannot do anything to punish Yumi until Naruto awakens and punishes her. And Minato-kun, what are you saying? Kushina stuttered. Yumi is our daughter, Minato. If Naruto decides to push for a severe punishment, she could be executed. Minato actually growled at Kushina, silencing any further comments from the redhead. I may not be the best father, but lest you forget, Kushi-chan, Naruto is our child too. Yumi is completely aware of the clan laws. She has been educated in them since Naruto's departure, and she still openly attacked him. I can only delay his judgment on the matter as the father of Yumi, but he has the power to decide her fate. Kushina opened her mouth to retort, but she knew he was right. She wept as she caressed her daughter's hair. Please, Naruto, please don't take my daughter from me. Naruto silently woke from his ordeal, but upon sensing that he was not alone in the room, he remained as though he was still asleep. Extending his senses, he picked up the slight tug of his summons and they responded instantly, alerting him to the fact that they were the ones in the room with him. They used their link to notify him that they were alone with him, and he opened his eyes. Naruto could sense the curiosity in their gaze, even with their masked faces, as they most likely sensed that Gilgamesh's essence had ceased to exist, and he narrowed his eyes at Skull. Speak, Naruto ordered. He was in no mood for games or hidden agendas. Skull approached and bowed. I sense that our Lord Gilgamesh has faded into the shadow of nothing. I'm certain that you'll eventually make your point. What are you trying to say, Skull? Naruto sighed tiredly. Our true master is dead, Skull answered plainly. But our contract is still in effect. I see, Naruto responded. You want to fade as well, or do you wish to remain in my service? Skull croaked out a laugh. It was the first time Naruto had heard one of the BMD show any emotion. King Gilgamesh used our abilities incorrectly. He sought to use us as mere servants. We, the assassins of the once great nation of Yuzu, were delegated to tasks unsuited to our training. Our once feared squadron became thugs to that man. We would not see this occur again. And there we are, Naruto hummed. Do you want to kill me, Skull? Is that what you want? Our contract is still in effect, Skull repeated. We are incapable of slaying our contract holder. Then please get to the point, Skull, Naruto sighed again. If we must remain in your service, then we ask that you no longer shame us by demeaning our skills, Skull continued. You once sought to learn our ways. We cannot teach what you are ill-suited to learn, master. And that means what, exactly? Naruto asked whilst rubbing his head to alleviate the pain he was starting to feel. Please, Skull, you may speak freely if you wish to. We are assassin, Skull intoned, causing a shiver to go down Naruto's spine. We are not suited to frontline combat. You, master, are a combat specialist, and we remain to shadow you in the dark places of the world. We are assassin, we are your eyes, we are your ears, and we are your hand in this world in which only we can navigate. Naruto understood. Very well, you wish to remain in service to your master, but you cannot act as you once did then as your master. I order you to spread into your world and listen. You will be my eyes and ears and spy for me, to kill for me. Is this acceptable to you and your ways?